Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the January 20th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. Chair recognizes the attendance of and assistance of all our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, and Susan. And we are short one commissioner tonight. Betsy is off, so I will elevate Pat for the record. Well, I just did that, didn't I? You appointed alternate as Pat for the record. I'd like to remind commissioners for commenting. I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to speak over each other. And that all votes have to be done by roll call. So when I call your name, please state your name and your vote. And though it may be redundant, even if you've made the motion or the second, still going to ask for your vote, just so the record is clear. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function. Once that hearing has been opened, at the appropriate time, I will call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. And just like to tell you, we have a full agenda tonight, so let's try to stay on point. And as always, keeping it short and sweet always pleases the chairman. First up, vote minutes, January 13.
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes and find them in order and make a motion to approve them pending any potential changes or additions by my fellow commissioners.
So
I would second it under the same terms, Steve Patton.
I like that. Does anybody have anything they'd like to throw in there? All righty. We'll go for the vote. Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark.
Rooney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes of 113. Next up is requests for determination of applicability. First one, Michael Sissenwine, 39 Mill Pond Way, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace 200 square feet of an existing patio with a wooden deck. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark.
Rooney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, East Marine and Island Commuter Corporation, 89 and 75 Falmouth Heights Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct emergency short-term bulkhead repairs. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark.
Rooney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Michael T. and Martha B. McGahan, number 6 Ravenwood Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a new deck within the footprint of an existing deck. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawk second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up are continued requests for determination of applicability. First one, Thomas Garrity, Weedy Lane Realty Trust, 10 Weedy Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise RAZE, an existing garage, to construct an addition to the existing dwelling and to expand the existing deck. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state, a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawk second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Charles S. Matteo, 77 Miami Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace an existing wooden deck and staircase within the existing footprint. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawk second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Stephen Davino, 29 Toby Lane, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to enclose a porch entry, install a new roof, remove second-story decks, and reframe a portion of the second story. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Arlo Hawk second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up are requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up is Lawrence and Valerie Sullivan, 345 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise RAZE, the existing single-family dwelling, and to construct a new single-family dwelling with associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just promoted Mike Borselli up to present the project.
thank you. Mr. Borselli, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
The applicant Lawrence and Valerie Sullivan own the property at 345 Grand Avenue. It's at the intersection, or corner, I should say, of Grand Avenue and Fairmont Avenue. It's close to, if not at the high point of Grand Avenue as you make your way around the bluff from Falmouth Harbor to Falmouth Heights. It overlooks Vineyard Sound on the other side of Grand Avenue. There is a coastal bank on the opposite side of Grand Avenue that slopes down to a beach in Vineyard Sound beyond, all more than 100 feet from the proposed lot. So the resource area of note in this case is the top of the coastal bank that we show on the plan. And we also show the 50-foot no disturbance zone, which is basically Grand Ave and the sidewalk. And then the outer buffer zone B, which runs basically in the entire lot. The lot itself contains 4,642 square feet. I think you've seen houses bigger than that on some applications. And the existing house is shown on this site plan, outlined in red for reference. There's actually a bump out here that won't be reconstructed. The house is in a state of disrepair. Significant maintenance is necessary, not up to code. So the owner decided it was best to raise and reconstruct. He's done his best to basically keep it in this effectively the same footprint. There aren't really a lot of options on where you could put it. There's two cesspools on the property. They're shown as circles, dash circles, that are substandard and slated for pumping and removal. There's a new septic system proposed on the lot, and it's virtually impossible to meet setback requirements from the road layout or the existing building. So we have applied to already and received approval from the Board of Health for setback variances. We did a impervious surface study, and that's in your package. And with the calculations that we performed, there's a requirement for 80 square feet of mitigation planting. We obviously don't have the ability to put it along the top of the coastal bank because the road is there. So we showed it on the lot in this location in green. I did go over the staff report, and there were a couple comments, one of which relates to a small area of deck that I evidently I must have missed and not shown on the existing conditions plan. I haven't had a chance to field check that to add it, but if I did, that would probably, it would reduce the mitigation area because there's no intention of rebuilding it. However, there's another comment on the staff report about the location of any AC pads or generators, and at the time that at the point at which this house design is, they hadn't made a determination on that. So I did not show those, and I'm not sure if there will be a generator. So it's likely that the generator and the AC would probably offset the deck. The small deck that isn't shown on the plan. But I can get answers to those questions, and I can change the plan if you think it's necessary and request a continuance. I would, if we do, I'm hoping it would be, 2 or 3 week continuance so that the applicant can proceed with the permitting process. I think that sums it up, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think the only question we have is, when did that deck area go in? It's kind of, Mike, if you want to kind of look into that, when that small deck area in the back went in, aerials, it doesn't look like it's there in like 18, it shows up in 19, or maybe it's 19 and 20. You might just have to look at, we might just have to talk about it.
Sure.
If we do have you ground truth that for when that decking went out there, it shouldn't be a long continuance. I mean, that's an easy thing. And if anything, it might offset your AC, and it might actually even eliminate the need for your, what did you say, bayberry or beach plum that you're,
Beach plum, yep.
yeah. So you may want to look into that. The only other question we had, besides the stuff we talked about yesterday, was the wall, the little wall along that. Is it just kind of like a block wall, kind of tidy it up? It looks like the poured concrete and.
Yes, parts of it meander out off the property into the road layout. It's I believe it's at its tallest point, 2 feet. It's more of a tall curb than a wall, or it's a landscape. So the intent is to remove it and replace it. And it'll probably be made out of stone or those prefabricated split block.
Okay.
We didn't design a detail or anything because it was only 18 inches tall.
Okay. Replace kind, AC, and I think that's it.
Kind of simple. Kevin Newton, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, sir, thank you.
All right. Courtney, we'll start with you.
I have no question.
Excellent. Kevin? O'Brien, sorry. Mr. O'Brien. Kevin O'Brien, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Mark?
I have no questions.
Maury?
No questions. Thank you, staff.
Indeed. Pat?
No questions.
Peter?
No questions.
Steve?
No questions.
Mike, I just have a question out of curiosity. Zoning, you don't have to meet setbacks, current setbacks because of pre-existing, is that correct?
Yeah,
Did I ask that correct?
we require a special permit from the Board of Appeals, and Kevin Clower has submitted that application. I don't know when the hearing is, but it's been, Matt Clower Law Firm is handling that. So it's a
Okay.
non-conforming structure, so you need a special permit to raise and reconstruct.
But that's been applied for.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat comment function?
Not for this project, Mr. Chairman, no.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take that.
Look, Courtney, we need to look at that plan and have Mike go out and look at that decking. So Mike, if we put you on the 3rd, would that be okay? And then you could go out and get your plan into us next week, and we'll move you right along.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, since you're still in zoning and everything too, so
Yes.
we'll move you right along. Okay, excellent.
So we'll do
Were
it.
you formally requesting a continuance, Mike?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Go ahead, Courtney, sorry.
All right, so I will draw that and start again. The request of the applicant will continue this hearing until Jen,
February 3rd.
February 3rd.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to continue this until February 3rd. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Me, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until February 3rd. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you.
All right, next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. First item, Francis and Claire Norton, 87 Childs River Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling to construct a new single-family dwelling utilizing the existing foundation to install a new, larger septic tank and for all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Borselli is still in as a panelist to present the project.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
again,
Borselli.
if I could share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for the record, Mike Borselli, I represent the applicant, Frank and Claire Norton. The Nortons own the property at 87 Childs River Road. There's an existing residence on the property that has sustained substantial damage due to fire. And there's no alternative other than to raise and reconstruct the house. It's beyond repair. So the site plan before you shows the existing house to be reconstructed. There are some expansions to it. The expansions are all either lateral with this proposed 12.5 by 16 addition or between the house and Childs River Road. There's no proposal to do any expansion seaward to the wetland resources. There is a section or a portion of the building that we've noted as existing foundation shall be excavated to allow for installation of footings in a new foundation wall. That is because when the house was constructed, it was decades ago when it wasn't constructed to meet state building code for footing depth, and an inspection revealed that the footing in this location is not deep enough. So this section will, a foundation will be removed and a new foundation will be installed that meets the state building code, but it will not go closer to the wetland resources. I guess I should have mentioned the wetland resources include a coastal bank, land subject to coastal storm flowage. The coastal bank actually runs through the house because the topography fits the definition, and it's also coincident with the FEMA designated flood zone AE 13. There's also water frontage on Childs River, so there's land under the ocean, and I suspect, and I should add to the plan that it could possibly be land containing shellfish. So for the benefit of Commissioner Harlow Hawks, I'll add that to the plan. The staff comments were reviewed, and there was a specific comment about a tree that's located right here, this 15-inch diameter tree, which we had described as to be pruned. When this addition is actually laid out by a tape measure and you really look at it closely, and the staff concurs with this, that tree would really, there's not a high likelihood it would survive. In fact, the canopy would be very close to the addition. So the reality is it would be better to remove it instead of attempting to prune it. And if we removed it, we would replace it with another tree. But in talking to my client, we made a decision collectively, mainly with my advice, and this addition is not absolutely necessary. And the applicant has made a decision not to construct this proposed addition. Therefore, the house will be squared off here, and this 16-foot by 12.5 projection will be eliminated. It'll eliminate any need for any pruning or any changes to the tree, because it's the face of the existing houses will remain the face of the house after it's reconstructed. There's another reason other than the tree that's important to the applicant, and that is when we staked out the required mitigation for these additions, he didn't realize how much mitigation he would need. His family and extended family and young grandchildren and such use this. It's like the only flat area of the yard available on the water side of the house. So he was concerned about the need for putting the mitigation there. So if we eliminate this, there's another more self-serving, I don't know if the word benefit's the right word, but there's a reduction in the amount of mitigation. So I would submit a revised plan that shows a portion of this mitigation eliminated from the application to offset the reduction in the proposed impervious surfaces. So hopefully that was clear. I don't know if it was a mouthful, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The only other activities on the site include elimination of this pavement, this remote parking area. And there's an existing septic tank that's less than 10 feet from this addition. So there's a note on the plan to remove it and install a new 1,500 gallon septic tank that meets the 10-foot setback. The system passed an inspection, so that's the only upgrade to the septic system proposed. There's no plans to increase bedrooms. The number of bedrooms will remain the same. Otherwise, we would be proposing a septic upgrade as well. I think there was one other question about a fence, and I'm not sure I understand the question. There may be a small wire fence. I think maybe there's a reference to a wire fence here, but I don't know the basis for the question or what's behind the question.
I believe there's about a 3 or 4 foot tall wrought iron fence.
In
along the
here?
wall. Yeah, I believe so.
I'll have to check with my client, but I believe because the grandchildren, it was like a safety thing. And there was no intention to remove it. But I can double check with him because of the safety concerns with this wall. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, if you would stop, there you go. Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Pat's right. Mike, there's some little wrought iron fence right along the top of that revetment, because it's just lawn right down to the revetment. So it probably is a safety thing. We just wanted to know, once they put the plants there, are they going to be removing that? Because it is kind of an impediment to wildlife. So you'll be needing a continuance, so you can check with your client, because you're going to be revising the plan. So I'm assuming you're going to want the third on this one too, correct?
I would request the third,
Okay.
unless there's some chance that I can just submit a revised plan and you could close the hearing.
I'd like to see where you're going to put the mitigation, because I don't want to get into a situation, Mike, where, all of a sudden the mitigation's like elongated along the property boundaries. Not that you would ever do that, but I just think that, since you're revising a significant portion of that mitigation, the board should be able to see what they're approving. The only other thing is, after Alyssa and I had you on the phone yesterday, Mike, we were taking another look at the pictures she took, and that 12-inch pine near the planter you have over there
This, oh, yeah, I see it.
and the 12-inch oak over by the 15-inch pine I originally was concerned about.
Yes,
Only the 12-inch pine, I think, if you go and you stand where the corner, where the house is, and they're gonna take the house down and rebuild it, since we don't know what the architecturals are gonna look like for the house. That might really be impacting that tree. So take a look at that tree, because that one might not survive. And then it might actually be just a little too close to the house for their comfort for a new house. So just take a look at that one as well, and maybe check out that other 12-inch oak that's just southeast of that pine that I was originally concerned about at the corner of that addition. No, because if you're no longer putting the addition in,
right.
that oak will be fine. So
Yes.
scratch that comment.
Okay.
But check out that 12-inch pine when you go and check out the fence or whatever.
Okay.
We do think when we were out there that tree might be impacted as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
I'm fine. I'm sorry. There was just some back.
Kevin, you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No comment.
All right.
That's
Steve,
the
we're going to start with who, Steve, we're going to start with you for comments.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. We're starting with me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I don't have any questions. I do think that we pretty much put the house where the other house was, and it's a shame it was lost by fire, but I think this replacement is pretty much just same as the other one.
Agreed. Yeah. All right. Peter?
No questions or comments.
No comments. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Maury?
Ditto Steve's comment.
Mark?
No comments.
Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Courtney?
Yeah, my only comment is that I know the applicant is concerned about it and, the amount of mitigation and reducing the play area for his kids, but I have an observation, if you remove that, is that that mitigation serves as an anti falling off the wall kid barrier. And so it's an advantage to keep it for that reason, as well as improving wildlife habitat of the non-human type. No other questions.
All righty. All right. So Mike, do you have a request for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could request a continuance to February 3rd, and I'll submit revised plans no later than next Wednesday.
Bird,
Excellent.
so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, but one more step. Jen, are there any public chat comments?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until February 3rd. Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat?
RSI.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until February 3rd. Thank you again, Mr. Boselli.
Thank
Mike,
you.
you're done for tonight, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay. Good night.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Good night.
visiting. All right. Next up, Cindy Coates, trustee, the 187 Penzance Road Trust, 187 Penzance Road. Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to construct and maintain a 4-foot by 127-foot timber walkway with steps and lighting, to create a 6-foot by 200-foot gravel path, to install an aeration system and subsurface electric lines for pond restoration, to install an E1 pump and force main to connect the workshop building to the existing system, that is the septic system, to remove 9 trees and plant 27 trees, to relocate and install 2,390 square feet of mitigation plantings under order of conditions 25-2180, and all associated clearing, excavation, grading, and landscaping. And Jen, before you say anything, Pat would like to announce a disclosure. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney Wall is representing one of the neighbors in this matter, and I have a professional relationship with Attorney Wall regarding a matter not under the jurisdiction of the commission. I filed a disclosure with our appointing authority and the town clerk outlining the relationship and stating that I can act without prejudice on matters presented to the commission by Attorney Wall. I make this disclosure to dispel any potential appearance of conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Mr. McGrath up to present the project. Mike, is there anybody else on your project team I'm pulling up for this? Is Tim there to help you share your screen? What was that?
Is Laura Moynihan attending?
I see Laura. I will promote her to a panelist.
She may.
Anybody else, Mike?
I believe that's it.
Okay. Are you going to be able to share your screen tonight, Mr. McGrath?
Yes, I can
Okay.
share my screen tonight.
Okay, just checking. All right, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Laura Monahan up as well.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath, you're up, sir.
Yes. The first thing I wanted to do is to first say, I hope everybody's doing well, and I'm quite sad because I'm missing a family party that celebrates the results of the election today. So in any case, what this is, well, my name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered professional engineer and a registered professional land surveyor. I work for Holmes and McGrath, and we have prepared a notice of intent and a series of plans to do certain activities on a parcel at the very end of Penzance. It's 9.8 acres. It has almost a half a mile of frontage on either Vineyard Sound or on Buzzards Bay. It's a very unique parcel, and it's a beautiful parcel. There is a new owner, and so for the first time in 25 years, there's going to be some substantial improvements conducted on the site, and we're here to ask for conservation approval of several different activities. So what I'd like to do is first I'm going to show you the overall site. Can you see the overall site plan that I have?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. There's a very significant main house here. Then there's a second house over here. And then there's a building we now call the Harbor House over on this side. And what is going on is that this side on Buzzards Bay is a velocity zone, and I'm tracing the velocity zone line. And on the Vineyard Sound side, it's in a different velocity zone, elevation 17. So there is then there's a large wetland that's over to the northwest side. There is a small little stony beach here, and there's a continuous riprap construction that starts over here and runs all the way around the site. the Conservation Commission approved that riprap construction a long time ago. You've also seen this site in that this house was rebuilt. And there was an order of conditions about, approving the reconstruction. When the riprap was originally built, there was a condition that required there be a 5-foot vegetated strip that was to be constructed along here. The former owner didn't put it in because he told me that it interfered with access by emergency equipment to come down into this area. And he said occasionally they actually came down to the point. They can't do that anymore because of the vegetation. So in any case, we did apply and receive certificates of compliance for I think there were 3 orders, and the bottom line is it's well known that we have to make up and install the buffer that was required by the old order. So what we're doing here is we're showing that this is where the required buffer is going to be installed. The other thing we're doing is that that's on this site is we're showing that there's a certain 9 number of trees that are in this area that we would like to remove so that there's a better view through this area. And we're showing there's 27 new trees to make up for the trees that we propose to remove. There is the next thing we're doing is I should show you well, what we're going to do is we're showing that there's going to be a bathroom installed in this end of this structure. This is a stone structure. It's connected to this by a stone wall, and there's a framework overhead. And when we put this bathroom in, we're going to put in a proposed connection to the existing sewer. The sewer was installed a long time ago. There was it's over 20 years, but the capacity of this septic system is for 11 bedrooms. There's been changes in the interior of this house, and then now there's only 5 actual bedrooms. But in any case, what this is for is this is for people that might be working on site. They can now, have access to a bathroom without driving to offsite or entering one of the private residences. And with the with the privacy of the new owner being tantamount, plus the risk of COVID, he's decided it would be better to put this bathroom in. I have put a similar bathroom in up at the entrance to Penzance, and the Board of Health readily approved it. And there's plenty of capacity for the system, but in general, they have generally not required an increase to the capacity of a system for this kind of bathroom. So where the E1 is a pump system, and it's just going to dose it to the large system that already exists. The system did pass a septic inspection a few years ago. We're also going to put a stone rose that, I forgot to color it on this plan, but there's going to be a landscape feature of a stone compass rose that's going to be proposed in this area. We're also going to, the notice describes that there's an existing underground irrigation system, and we're asking to maintain it. It's been in existence for at least 20 to 25 years. So your regulations don't allow those, but it already exists. So we thought we should bring that up and ask for the approval just to maintain it. So the next phase is that there is, I don't know if you can see this. This is the main entrance on Penzance Road. Then the house is located in here, and the shed was in here. The second house is about here. So what we want to do is propose a path that's constructed right on top of the riprap. And there's an existing path here. And what we would like to do is then construct a proposed boardwalk across this small pond. And so there would be access to this beach. This is a beautiful sandy beach. There's, I didn't color it well, but there's a dune in this area. And I was at the beach today. It's just absolutely beautiful. The only trouble is that the owner, his children and guests have to walk across the rocky intertidal shore here to get to the beach at low tide. And then at high tide, this gets to be very deep. So the point is that they don't have practical, physical, safe access to their beach. This is just a beautiful beach. So the proposal is to construct a proposed path on top of just behind the riprap. If you've been to the site, this area between the freshwater wetlands and the top of the riprap is very thick. And there's actually a little bit of erosion in spots. So when I have gone there, I've either during the tides, if it's high tide, I actually clamber along the riprap and then clamber along the riprap here, but it's very difficult because there's overhanging trees and it's unsafe. So so what we're doing is we're proposing a path. The notice describes the path as 6 foot wide. The reason we picked that width is that we do propose to put utilities down there, and the bottom line is a mini excavator is 5 foot wide. That's why we picked the 6 foot. We can actually put the utilities in with a ditch witch, which is narrower, but we are going to need to have at some point a mini excavator to get there. There's an existing path right here, and this is an outline of the existing wetlands. They're freshwater wetlands. There's an existing, as I said, there's an existing small pond in here, and then there is a budding wetlands around here. We're proposing to build a boardwalk across this. This is a pond as defined by your regulations in that it's over 5,000 square feet. The boardwalk itself is going to be elevated so that it is accordance with the requirements of coastal zone management for boardwalks. It's going to be raised 6 foot above the average water in the pond. So this is a boardwalk very similar to what you've been approving before. There's been some comments, and one of the comments is we're showing AZEC decking. There's been an incorrect assertion that that's treated wood. It's not. It's made from PVC. So the material we're using on the deck is non-leaching PVC decking. The plan shows the decking to be have no voids. This is a boardwalk. It's not a pier, but if the commission wants, we can adjust it so that that more void ratios are provided. As I said, there's no easy walkway to the beach, and so we're proposing to construct this boardwalk. When we construct the boardwalk, we're also going to install into the boardwalk an air max system. Several months ago, I read about in some of the freshwater ponds in Massachusetts, there was a microorganism that was living in freshwater ponds, and it could cause people to get sick. When my surveyors, one of my surveyors, when when he was dealing with locating the water in the edge of wetlands, the next day he called in sick. So I put 2 and 2 together at the time thinking this was fresh water, and I told my client not to let any children, guests, or any children like his own children or anybody else actually play in this water. And if you go to the pond and you look at the pond, it's obviously stretched. There's a huge amount of floating mass. I investigated and I found a technology called AirMax by the pond guy. And what this is a proprietary system, and this proprietary system actually places, there's going to be basically diffusers of air that are placed on the bottom here and the bottom here, and air is pumped into this, and they will operate more or less continually. And I have a substantial experience in wastewater treatment. I think you know I have 3 patents, 2 elapsed, and I have just applied for another patent. In wastewater, when we bubble air through water, we make the water less dense because there's dissolved air in it. And what happens is, because it's less dense, some of the heavier particles drop. The other thing that happens when you bubble air into water, you create a different environment for the bacteria that live in the water. In this case, aerobic bacteria will grow and they will develop, and the aerobic bacteria are the ones that readily and efficiently consume biomass. So when the second step in wastewater treatment is to basically go through an aerobic stage, and in the aerobic stage, we always make the water clear, and we do drop the, in very general terms now, we do reduce the amount of pathogens. In wastewater, the amount of pathogens there's much more pathogens in anaerobic wastewater than in aerobic wastewater. There's still some pathogens in aerobic, but they're not to the same density as in anaerobic. This process will take a couple of years to work. The manufacturer of the AirMax system actually will seed the water as far as the creating the right environment for the bacteria to basically consume some of these suspended matter. So what happens is there's going to be a compressor, and then there's going to be air lines that are going to be suspended on inside the framing of the walkway. You won't see it. And the bottom line is over the course of about 2 years, according to the manufacturer, we should completely have clear water, and the amount of organic matter will settle. There may be more organic matter in a layer at the bottom, but it shouldn't be that much based on what happens in wastewater. So now it is, as far as my client's concerned, he wants to restore this. He wants this to have fish in it. So I think that's an appropriate goal. And he wants to make you understand that he really wants to do this. He thinks this is a very significant improvement. Now, there's been some discussion how this is in a velocity zone. This whole area here is in a velocity zone. The velocity zone it's elevation VE equals 17. You see this label here. Now, one of the things that, as far as what actually creates a velocity zone, it's an area where there is sufficient fetch for the waves to be generated. And there is a federal insurance study that is the basis of our flood zones. And they identify certain what they call transects. The nearest transect is located right here, which is, I don't know, it's about 4/10 of a mile north of our site. And the transect goes right into Buzzards Bay, and it's miles and miles and miles. So what I did in this case is I drew a transect that would be basically, if we go back to the previous picture, there's a transect that basically goes up and down this, the proposed walkway. I also drew another transect that is, I'm sorry, transect A is the one that goes up and down the boardwalk. Transect B goes parallel with the FEMA transect. So this one is miles long. A is about a miles long, and it ends up inside of Hadley Harbor. The other transect is transect C, which is slightly less than a half a mile, and it goes through Woods Hole Passage. The reason I'm bringing this up is that the height of the wave is proportional to the length of time that the wind has to generate a wave. So if the wave that's generated is over 3 foot high at this location, and it's, I think it's actually 4 foot high in this location, but this transect is miles. Common sense says the transect here at C, being a half mile, is much less. There's not enough wind and open water to generate a significant wave coming from this side. This side is also, if we go back to this exhibit, there's a landform here that's up to elevation 12. So if the top of the wave is 17, it's going to break in this area, and only a certain portion of the wave, have much less energy, will go this way. So my point about saying that is that there will not be significant waves coming from this direction. If you look at my other transect that goes straight out in, let me go back to the exhibit so it's not confusing. If we look at exhibit A, that's only a mile that runs right up and down. Again, this is in direct line with the boardwalk, and this is not enough length to generate the kind of wave that would be generated when you compare it to the transect 176. Now, transect B, let's look at transect B when we look at a bigger plan. Is transect B is, if you look at it, it actually goes through some pretty shallow water in here. And then when the wave gets near the shore, the tendency of the wave is to turn 90 degrees. So what I'm saying to you is, and there's also a piece of land to the, in this direction. So my professional opinion is, even though it's been classified as a velocity zone, I do not believe that there's actually going to be 3 foot waves that will hit this area. So the other point is that your regulations basically say that that we have to look at all the different impacts in a velocity zone. And to me, if we construct this on open piles like we're showing, and I believe that this is an appropriate construction for land in a velocity zone. I have purposely chosen this to be designed in accordance with the coastal zone management standards. If I were to elevate this above the velocity zone, like could be implied, it would be much, much higher. And I didn't think that was either appropriate for the landform nor appropriate for the neighborhood. So when I look at this project, yes, it's got some interesting aspects, but I know that from what I've seen and what I've read about the reports of this technique, that this technique will restore this pond. It may take 2 years, but I believe that's an appropriate activity. And I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. And I look at all of the things that are being done in this site, and I think it's absolutely an approvable project. Anyways, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you, Mike. If you would, you can stop sharing your screen. Does Laura have anything she'd like to add to this? Ms. Moynihan?
Thank you very much. And just a couple of very brief points. I know Mike's presentation was pretty thorough. I just want to point out that under the regulations, there are structures in velocity zones are not absolutely prohibited, which seems to have been asserted in writing to the commission. There are presumptions that can be overcome. There's also exceptions in 10.38 when pond restoration is involved. So I guess I would just urge you to look at those regulations carefully and not accept blatant statements that structures in velocity zones are not permitted, because I don't think that's the case. In the Fay Road case that's may have been discussed, the applicant was not able to overcome the presumptions of adverse impacts, and that's why the court decided against that applicant. Also, there was an assertion that Fish and Wildlife approval is somehow needed for this project. I don't think that's what the regulation says. I think the regulation says that Fish and Wildlife can approve a project, and that may be an exception as well under 10.38. So I guess I would just ask you to look carefully at those regulations and the benefits of the pond restoration here when considering this boardwalk structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The board received the staff report. Sorry, there are chats coming in. So a couple of concerns, Mike. I'm going to start back at the beginning of your presentation and then we'll get to the pond.
Yes.
So, sorry. Couple of things on the first part. There's a wooden structure out there, Mike, attached to that workshop. I didn't hear you address what that is.
Oh, yes. What's going on is the owner had some outdoor showers at another site and he's brought them here. Those are outdoor showers. They're not included in the application, but I will, based on some other things, I assume we're going to have to continue this hearing and we will address and add the outdoor shower to the plan.
Thank you, appreciate that. And you may want to look at your flagstone compass rose. Staff believes you have that labeled as the A zone and it's actually in a B zone. Can you relook at that for me, please?
Well, I also acknowledge that we're increasing impervious area and I have to increase the mitigation slightly offset the area of the compass road.
Okay. Nope. I just want you to take a look at how you have it labeled because we think, okay. So which brings me to your mitigation area. So if you see the staff report, And I believe that, when Alyssa sent you the staff report, Commissioner, she also sent you an old plan that Mr. McGrath had done in the fall. And that the area that is currently turf lawn was kind of like a low growing shrubby wild grass area. And now that is completely turned into turf lawn. So I think there's pictures of that. I can share some more pictures, but so that area within that A zone and B zone has been mowed, removed and turned into more of a turf lawn without any permits. So we were kind of concerned when we went out on the site where there were these defined turf paths and this area had just been groomed. Another thing, Mike, I understand the desire to remove the trees, but where you have the proposed trees is completely inappropriate. One, you don't tell us what kind of trees are going where. And if you actually go out to the site and stand where you have the trees marked, and we have done this exercise before, you and I, Mr. McGrath, and we pretend we're a tree and we're going to be growing and we're growing up. We're obviously going to be growing into the canopy of the other trees. So it's really, you need to look at where you're putting those 27 trees. I applaud the applicant for trying to increase the trees on the lot. That's great. But I just think we need to think about where you are placing them because they're not going to grow very well in that area. Mr. George, I do see that your hand is raised and that you want to say something, and I will promote you up to a panelist when I'm finished. Actually, let me promote Mr. George since he is the applicant. I'm going to promote him up right now, if you don't mind, Jamie.
Is the applicant, you said?
Yes, the applicant.
Okay.
Mr. George, I'm promoting you up. Yep, you're now a panelist, Mr. George, so you'll be able to address the board. So I think, Mike, that's all we have for the mitigation area. So I do want you to kind of look at that for me, okay?
Yes, but I wanted to point out, I've never been called a tree before. You
Oh,
said
yes, you and I have done this, Mike. We've pretended we're trees out in the field.
I've been called.
I know you're laughing at me, Mike, because I know you remember. So let's go to the usually allow a 4-foot wide path. So the 6-foot wide path is a little problematic for the staff. And then, so now I'm moving over, Mike, we're following your electrical line and your path, and we're going over to the area where the pond is. Instead of rerouting the path to go to the boardwalk, which to the staff is problematic, maybe you should give some consideration to extending, you already have the path along the top of a revetment anyway, extending that path along the revetment, clearing some vegetation back from the top of that revetment, and placing the path along there to access the beach. The structure is in a velocity zone. The staff does have some concerns with that. I know you tried to address that, Mike, but the appropriate way to address the velocity zone, as you know, is to file for a LOMR. So if you really feel that your assertion and your calculations and your assessment of those transects that you drew in the fetch is correct, then you know that the appropriate avenue to take is to request a letter of map revision from FEMA and change the designation of the flood zone. Okay, this board does need to operate on the fact that it is designated as a velocity zone. And obviously the staff is going to have concerns with a 127-foot long structure in a velocity zone. There, the commission has seen the submittals from both Arlene Wilson and Brian Wall, and the reference to the case out on Fay Road where we had a similar raised structure in a velocity zone, and that was considered a structure by the appeals court. So there was one statement in your, and I think looking at the pond is a great idea, Mike, but we just need a little bit more information on the pond. And more information on this diffuser, because you make the assertion in your submittal that you feel that the board should approve the boardwalk because, maybe I can just find it, because it falls in a section of our regulations, or you're asserting that it falls into a section of our regulations. Why can't I remember? Sorry. I can find it real quick on the staff report. That it's part of a ecological restoration project. And I'm gonna have to disagree, Mike, with the thought that the boardwalk is critical to the restoration of this pond. I actually am on, when you were talking about the, these are on their website on my second screen, and there's nothing on the website that says you absolutely need that boardwalk structure to install this system. There are multiple ways that you can install this AirMax system. So we'd like you to, the staff is saying that maybe you should look at additional ways of deploying the system instead of having that boardwalk in that area. And just give us a little bit more on the hydrology of that pond and everything else. And I think that is it for right now, Mr. Chairman, unless Kevin Newton has anything to add.
No, Jen, I think you covered most of our comments.
All right, Mr. George, did you have something you want to add?
Mr.
We
George, you're
can't
on
hear you.
mute.
Gonna toss his computer out the window.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
There he is.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you very much, for the opportunity to address the Conservation Commission and for your consideration of the things that Mike and Laura just talked through. I did want to clarify quick things. One is the rose medallion that Mike referred to. He was pointing to the front lawn area, but that would actually go in the circle in the driveway area, and it's 8 feet in diameter. And as Mike suggested, we'll do mitigation planting, 3 to 1 in return for that piece. So I just wanted to point that out. Number one. Number two, to your point about the lawn front area looking like it was being mowed, I think perhaps you might know Ted Fitzel, who has been, it was in the family for 70 years. Ted has been taking care of the property for 25 years. He moved into that guest house in 1995 with the Clarks, and he's been taking care of that area, and I've asked him to maintain it in the integrity that he has been done in the past. And all it is wild grass. It still remains to be wild grass. It has not been changed to turf grass or anything else, but every once in a while they mow it down lower at the record, and they've been doing this for years, and I don't know how many years, but many years. And it was in part to help reduce the amount of ticks that collect in the area. So they mow it down and then they let it grow up at twice the rate of the rest of the lawn area, so that those paths remain. And that's how it's been. And I think just looking at it at a time after it had been mowed and at the end of the season, it looks low. I noticed that in the photos that you circulated as well. But we maintain it in the same way it's been maintained for, and I don't want to quote the exact number of years, but according to Ted, since he's been caring for the property. The suggestion around, and I think Mike addressed the shower, it was a temporary, it was an outdoor shower in another location. It doesn't even have a back to it. We just stored it there and tied it there for the moment because we sold our other property that it was on. The area, Jennifer, that you noted around, if we just continued a path along the top of the riprap to get out to that beach, and I welcome and encourage every one of you to, feel free to walk the property. You'll see that you actually cannot do that. There are very large, lots of trees, I mean, big trees. So it would require us to cut down, pretty substantial trees that have grown out in that area. And it's unless you're suggesting we cut down all those trees, which I don't think you're doing, there isn't the possibility of creating a path up in that area. It's not low growth in any way or form. And then just the last thing I wanted to mention about the path, we're happy to reduce it to 3 or 4 feet or whatever, just allows an individual beachgoer to be able to walk back and forth. The reason it was also going to be wide is we're running wires down there because the aeration systems that Mike is proposing requires power, and we need to bring power down to that area. And we'll minimize it if it needs to be hand dug or whatever, to make sure that we only have a 3 or 4 foot wide path. We're absolutely, happy to do it. We're just looking for access to really the only usable, swimmable, beach on the, on a 10-acre property. And as Mike mentioned, it's gorgeous. Again, you're all welcome to go down there and visit it. And we're very much, I live in a home today that, that was earmarked to be torn down because they didn't think it was restorable. And we spent many years and a lot of money, frankly, restoring it. We're very much into restoration. We'd like to restore the pond. It's dead, it's dying, or it's dead, or whatever classification you might put it in. And there's a way to restore it, make it a lively part of the wetland and the community. And then there's also a wetland area nearby. And we're commissioning a study to see if we can't, eliminate some of the invasives that are there. There's Phragmites that have totally taken out and is eradicating any of the wildlife in that area. And so we'll come back to you with a proposal also to restore a wetland that was at one time a cranberry bog on the property. And we are, we're restorers, and we see this pond as an opportunity to go and restore it. And putting the bridge over it will protect it forever, because now you're not having people trampling, walking around it, cutting, doing all this other crazy stuff. We thought that this was the most, this would be a very appealing project to the Conservation Commission because, it meets all those, desires and requirements. So anyway, that's all. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. George.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question or a couple of comments. One, I need a clarification because in the proposal, the compass rose is stated to be a 14-foot diameter compass rose, and you stated, Mr. George, that was going to be an 8-foot diameter compass rose?
Correct. It's 8 feet.
It's 8 feet, not 14.
Correct. And it's 8 feet in diameter.
Okay.
And
Well, I guess that Mike, that correction needs to be made in the narrative then, because it does state that. And thank you for the history of the property, sir. We go on the property, we see what we see. We base our assessments off of what we see on a property, what we see on the aerials, and what we see on old site plans. So the area in question was actually designated by Mr. McGrath as a naturally vegetated area on a 2020 site plan for the RDA of this property. So, thank you for the history, and the board can take that information into account. As far as the boardwalk, it is going to be difficult for the staff to recommend the placement of the boardwalk, given the velocity zone, given that the staff will consider it a structure in the velocity zone. I am concerned about impacts if there is a large storm event and that structure becomes dislodged. There is a way, if the large trees along the top of that seawall prohibit the path, there is, I just measured it, there is an area in the outer B buffer to that wetland, to that pond, that you could put a 4-foot wide path, and the board permits, 4-foot wide paths. You know, quite often through buffer zones so people can access the water. That's nothing new for this commission. But I don't believe that the boardwalk is critical to the installation of that aeration system.
Could I speak to
I
that?
just want Mike to look at that, and I think
Could I speak to that?
there'll be a little bit more information on that.
Can I
Mr.
speak to that?
McGrath?
Well,
Yes, sir.
the point of, when you put the aeration system in, you can't wade into this water to put this aeration system in. So we're going to have something that we can, basically, that's gonna float that we can use. And you're not gonna be able to afford to put something that floats that's big enough unless you put in the boardwalk. The other thing about the boardwalk is it's then gonna make it easy to find the pipes that are the air pipes that are gonna go out there. And there's no inducement for him to put the aeration system in unless he has the boardwalk. I wanna make sure you understand that they sort of go hand in hand. But I believe that this is a very significant opportunity for the town to restore a very highly stressed pond. And I urge you to approve both the boardwalk and the aeration system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go with commission comments. Maury, are you prepared to start?
Sure. Actually, Jen pretty much asked all the questions and Mike's gonna have to come back with the answers, but just for perspective to the board, to enforce what Jen was saying about the inappropriate tree location. A roughly 2.5-inch caliper oak or cedar weighs approximately 400 pounds, but that's not the big thing. It's the ball itself is between 22 and 28 inches. So where those trees are proposed to be planted, you're going to kill all the other trees because the size of the holes you have to dig to plant them. So I'm going to really be against putting those trees in the location that they had recommended. And also, I think it would be prudent to know how many of each species and where they are going to end up, because cedars don't grow under canopies and neither do oaks. That being said, what kind of fish are they going to propagate in this pond, Mike?
I don't think we need to propagate fish because in another restoration I did in another town, the fish appeared, we think they were attached to the duck's paddles. There's ways for the fish, I guess it's called roe, to get into ponds that are isolated. And so there's another pond that they believe that's how the fish got there.
All right, so they're going to be naturally introduced by something, maybe, possibly.
Right, and if we're going to stock it, we'll have to go back and notify.
Okay.
That's a suitable condition.
And how, I don't know how long Mr. George has been there, but how long has this pond been in decline?
All I can tell is when I look at the aerial photographs over time, and there's not that many color ones, it always looks black. And it's the only little small pond around that has the same black color. So
Okay.
I would say it's been in decline for a very long time.
And again, I'm going to support Jen and the staff on the path being meandering along the seawall. You don't even show a lot of trees that are there, which my plan's behind me, it's big. So we all know if they're big trees, you can walk around them and make a meandering 4-foot path. And I would recommend to support Jen and the staff's idea on that. Thank you. That's all.
All right.
I have no questions at this time.
All right.
I can
Peter?
have you submit an aerial photo if you'd like to see now of the size of the trees. that are in that
Excuse
area
me.
You're referring to. Sorry. Unless
Peter.
we're given permission to remove them,
Can you,
create that meandering path or no?
please? I'll call on you again, sir. Peter, you're up.
Okay, I have a question to Mike. It looked like to me when I was on the property that there could have been a pathway and it washed out. And the looks like there is a thin ridge between the washed out area and the wetland. And that had markers saying center of the path, and the width of the pathway or dirt now is about 6 inches wide, but it looks like it has washed out on the seaward side, and it looks like in another storm it would wash through to the wetlands. Could you comment on that?
Could I share my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm a little bit slow. What I think what you're talking about is that we staked out this proposed path, but we also did a survey of it a long time ago. So it may well be that what you saw was the remnants of when they did the original survey, but that was over a decade ago, over 10 years ago. So the proposed path here, we were putting it up against the riprap, but there's no question there's been erosion and in this area. So have I answered your question?
Almost. You have the right area. And I was wondering, the stakes said the pathway in that area that you've ran the mouse over, but would it expand toward the wetland areas or expand toward the ocean?
What I had thought was going to happen was we were going to build the path basically centered on the stakes, but we can adjust it on the ground if you want us.
Well, if you centered it on the stakes, that would be a build out from the center line, both toward the ocean and the freshwater wetlands.
Yes,
Is that your intent?
yes, it was.
Okay, no further questions.
All right. Mike, if you would stop sharing,
I'm
please.
trying to.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, Steve.
No questions. Sorry.
All right, Courtney.
So it appears that the major sticky wicket on this issue, on this project is this boardwalk. And so the only comment I have is I would concur with Lori and with Jen that you guys should explore what alternatives you have for some kind of a meandering path that avoids taking out major trees and so on. And I know you're pretty ingenious, Mike, when you put your mind to it. So hopefully you can come back to us with a plan that, kind of meets those concerns. I mean, if this wasn't a velocity zone issue, I probably wouldn't have as much of a heart attack about it but it is in a velocity zone, and that's there've been there's enough precedent that has been cited by people in the audience as well that we would be going against if we were to approve a boardwalk. So I would look into the alternatives.
All right, Kevin.
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. The absence of the bridge or deck or whatever you call it would make it more difficult to install an aeration system, but it doesn't preclude it. And if you really want to restore it, believe me, you can find a way to install an aeration system, and it would be a pain to maintain it, but it's doable. That's all.
All right. Mark?
Well, I'm sort of looking over the regs and seeing what kind of values we are trying to protect here. They include significant to wildlife, habitat, recreation, aesthetics even, erosion sediment control, water pollution control. Well, some of these things this project actually deals with: water pollution control, aesthetics maybe, wildlife habitat certainly. It certainly has the opportunity to verify that it doesn't actually have an adverse effect upon some of these values. So in that sense, I'm sort of inclined to look at it favorably. I do agree, however, that we don't really need the bridge in order to have this water aeration system. And the water aeration system is really the major positive aspect of this project. So from that point of view, I guess I'm not sure that the water aeration, which would be very positive, supports the rest of the project, which is a little rough. That's all.
Thank you. Jen, is there anything in the chat functions that we haven't already read?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. 1 second, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Maury needed to go. She has an emergency,
Uh-oh.
so she may be back, but she has to
Okay.
on something. She just texted me, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
There is multiple chats, so I will start. And again, the board has received correspondence from Arlene Wilson and Associates and Brian Wall regarding this project. So let me find the ones that pertain to this one. This comment is from Attorney Wall. The commission relatively recently denied a proposal for an elevated timber walkway at 77 Fay Road on the grounds that the walkway was a new structure in a velocity zone and was prohibited by FWR 10.384D. The property owner appealed and asserted that the walkway was not the type of structure prohibited by the FWR 10.38. The Superior Court and the Appeals Court disagreed and affirmed the commission's decision. Case is Sorokin versus Falmouth Conservation Commission. The proposed walkway is similar to the one at 77 Fay Road and should be similarly denied. A letter further explaining this contention and enclosing a copy of the Sorokin case has been submitted on behalf of Mr. Dubois, co-owner of a budding property at 167 Penzance Road. And then Miss Arlene Wilson states that the only way to change the VE zone designation is to file for a letter of map amendment with FEMA, which the staff has already stated. Also, there is no water quality information to prove the existence of cyanobacteria, therefore no need for aeration. And that is from the IT to Mr. George, and that was taken care of. So those are the chats that are in the record at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? Mr. McGrath,
Hand
Laura?
raised again, Mr. Chairman, and Laura
Yep.
is trying to get your attention as well.
Got it.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Moynihan?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Attorney Wall's correspondence. I believe it was filed today. So I gather there's going to be a continuance request here in any event to deal with some of these plan issues. So we can address that in writing as well as Arlene's comments. But I'd just like to leave you with this thought, because I don't like it when cases are thrown at the commission in such a broad fashion. And I think every case like this needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. The issue in the Sorokin case was the applicant was arguing that it was not a structure. We haven't taken that position as far as I know to date. So that was really what that case was about. And there wasn't evidence presented to show or rebut the presumption of adverse impacts. So this case is different. You know, we are showing that there are benefits here with this boardwalk. So, but I'll explain that further in writing. I just wanted to leave you with that thought that it is a different case. And I would just urge the commission to keep an open mind, and we'll provide you with some more information on that in writing. Thank you for your time this evening.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. George.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I think, Mike said it well before, but I just wanted to reiterate, and again, I would encourage any one of you to go down there to visit it as well. But the pond, just like the beach, is also unapproachable without the boardwalk over it. And so without cutting a path to it or cutting a path around it. And so, our interest in preserving it is to also get the benefits of it. And, we're willing to make a very significant investment in, an aeration system, but we would also have, the benefit of walking over a beautiful boardwalk, to approach the beach to get there. And if you go down there and see it, you'll see that, you'd have to bushwhack your way down to the pond. And, our interest in restoring it is it's an important part of the, the property that we'd love to restore. We'd love to bring back wildlife. If it's natural fish that return, great. If there's a stocking issue and we need to, have that approved in advance, we'd be happy to do that too. But Mark, I thought, your view of it, to the benefits of what we're trying to do here and trying to restore and really not, violating or disrupting, other aspects of the mission of the commission, I think we're spot on. But to Mike's point, we're not going to make that kind of an investment to restore the pond if we don't have the opportunity to benefit from it, to see it, and to walk over it to get to our beach. So, thank you.
All right. Mr. McGrath, what are you thinking?
I believe it's appropriate to ask for a continuance of the public hearing.
Okay.
The hardest thing to do is the transects that was requested. I would point out that we did do transects about, 400 or 500 feet to the north, and we did move a floodplains. So at least FEMA did agree with my assertions up about 3 houses. So I would think
Mr. McGrath, when was that done? Was that before or after FEMA changed their maps?
it shows up on the FEMA site as an insert in the current flood insurance rate map. So it's been done.
You did it you did it after 14.
Yes, it was done after 14.
Okay, thank you.
So it's appropriate to ask for continuance. I'm looking for a calendar. It would seem that I should ask for continuance to March 3rd in order that we get the sections done. That's been requested. That those are the
Available, Jen?
to prove that the
Yes.
velocity zone is, that the waves would be less than 3 feet.
I can work around that, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that's right now we have that available.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'll make a motion if it's appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Motion to continue this hearing until March 3rd at the request of the applicant.
Harris, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until March 3rd. All right. If there's any other comments, questions? All right. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
I'm sorry, Maury can't. Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right. We are continuing this hearing until March 3rd. Thank you, Ms. McGrath, Ms.
Thank you.
Moynihan, Mr. George.
Thank you very much.
all. Thank you. Good evening.
All right. Next up. Who did we lose? All right. Next up, Gerald T. and Margaret T. Robinson, 290 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct and maintain a 3-foot by 60-foot aluminum gangway, a 3-foot by 10-foot timber pier extension, a 3-foot by 14-foot ramp, an 8 by 12 T-float and pilings, and for water and utility installation on Green Pond. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I need to promote the project team up, so I am promoting Tim Santos. Tim, is there anybody else on your project team I am promoting? I'm assuming I'm promoting Attorney Wood.
Attorney Wood and Paul Caruso.
Oh, yes, Paul. Sorry about that, Paul. I saw you in there before, too. I've promoted Attorney Wood and Paul Caruso, Mr. Chairman, up to as part of the project team.
Okay. Tim, we're ready whenever you are.
Okay, for the record, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. Also with me this evening is Paul Caruso, who performed the shellfish survey and prepared the shellfish survey, and Attorney Glenn Wood, representing the applicant. If you don't mind, I will share my screen.
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming everybody can see that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, again, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. Property is located at 290 Acapesket Road along Green Pond. The resource area is on or within 100 feet of the property at Green Pond itself, land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, salt marsh to the north and south of the property, a BVW associated with the salt marsh, coastal bank, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Property is located in the AE 15 flood zone. Some of you might be familiar with this project because we came before you, I think about 1.5 years ago, for a notice of intent to do a tear down and rebuild of the structure. The new house has been built. The property has been developed, and an order of conditions, excuse me, a certificate of compliance has been issued. So that project is done. If you've been to the site, it's a beautiful, beautiful project. We also applied for an RDA to rebuild this portion of the existing timber pier right here. We've been on site, which has been rebuilt. This timber pier and riprap wall is licensed. We have forwarded that license to the staff. That was one of their staff comments today. So the project before you tonight is we are proposing, and I'll kind of show it here and then go to the section to make it a little easier to understand. We're proposing to construct and install a 3-foot wide by 60-foot long spanning walkway in this area here off of the existing pier. And then we will construct a 3-foot wide by 10-foot timber pier with a ramp and a float. The mooring area is shown here on the seaward side of the float. Float is 96 square feet. It's 8 by 12. And there's over 5 feet of water depth at the seaward end. The distance from the mean high water, which is the most landward resource area to the end of the flow is 100 linear feet. So I will jump over to this. I'm assuming everybody can see this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm over on the profile view on the second sheet of the plans we submitted. So what we have here is the existing wooden pier, salt marsh, riprap, and then the green pond. So we're proposing to install two 12-inch diameter wooden piles right at the end of the existing pier. And we're proposing to span a 60-foot section, which crosses over what we're calling shellfish sampling area A. In this area, and Paul will talk about that, this area is a suitable shellfish habitat, but our design specifically span this area to avoid any impact to the substrate or the water area, or to prevent any inability to shellfish in this area. So we're spanning across 60 feet, installing a new 12-inch pile to construct a wooden section, which is in the shellfish sampling area A. This is the BA split line. So as you can see, the new piles that we're installing are in an unsuitable area and an area below your threshold. This is the timber section that we're proposing, the 10x3, coming down to a ramp with a new set of piles and a float, appropriate water depth. We believe this project meets your performance standards and regulations. It is an approvable project as shown on these plans. I'm going to turn the hearing over to Paul, and I have an exhibit for him. I can go back to my first sheet. He can talk about his shellfish report and sampling, and I do have a substrate exhibit if you'd like me to bring it up that he can talk about as well. And then Glenn has a little bit of history that he wants to go over as well. So I'll turn it over to Paul at this time.
Paul, you there? Jen, can you see him?
I see Mr. Caruso, he's on mute. Mr. Caruso, there, you're on mute and we can't see you. Tim? Could you please try to get a hold of Mr. Caruso, or maybe skip to Attorney Wood and then go back to Mr. Caruso?
Sure, that's not a problem. I'll send him a message.
Can you hear me now, Jen?
Oh, I can hear you now, Paul.
Okay, yep. There's a little different version of Zoom than I've been using.
Nope,
So-
no worries.
Yeah, I want to start a video here. Okay, looks like my face is on the screen now. Good. Hopefully you've all received my report. Oh, for the record, Paul Caruso, Cape Coastal Resources. I'm working as a shellfish consultant for the project. I have a prior history with Mass Division Marine Fisheries for 30 years as a senior biologist. Hopefully you've all gotten the report, been able to read it. I don't want to go too deep into it unless you need more information because it'll take up too much time. But a survey was performed at the site August 20th and 21st, early in the morning, because the good tides were early in the morning. We had minus tides, makes things a lot easier working in shallow water. As pointed out in the previous exhibit, the seaward margin here of this property is bordered by a continuous seawall. We have a small fringing salt marsh, and north of the salt marsh, the subtidal land runs right up to the riprap. There's no beach per se. Sediment wise, you have a nice sandy mixed sand flat that runs offshore to about -3 feet. At that point, we have a relatively steep drop off. I know it doesn't show on the side elevation that well, but it goes off pretty rapidly to an all mud bottom, which extends from about that -3 foot depth out to the limit of the survey, 120 feet or so from mean high water. The survey, as per the regulations, was divided into 2 areas. Area B is the shorewood area, and Area A is the area outside of that. That shorewood area extends out to 60 feet seaward from the mean high water line. As per the regulations, there were transects were performed in area B and area A. They were done along the center line, 10 and 20 feet either side of the structure, proposed structure, and additional transects in area A, 30 and 40 feet either side of the center line. So in that sense, it conforms with the regulations. The sampling was done using a metal quadrat driven to refusal into the bottom in area B. And in area A, because of the very muddy sediments there, the depth, the fact you can't get air on Cape Cod anymore, Jennifer was nice enough to extend to me allowance to use a line pull rake to sample the bottom. So that's pretty much the methodology. The data treatment was as per the regulations, pretty simple. You just take the count you have, divided by the number of samples you've taken, and multiply by 9. The results were pretty straightforward. Area B, the shoreward area, had 13 quahogs of various sizes. There were only one little neck and one seed quahog though, so not a lot of current production going on. There's a lot of soft-shelled clam shack in that area, but no soft-shelled clam were found during the survey. Area A, in contrast, like I said, it's a very muddy bottom. We found a limited number of larger and older quahog, 11 to be specific. So area A is not did not meet the threshold. Density is 0.3 per yard. Area B, it was 2.25 square yard, which does trigger your threshold. There were no other species of live shellfish sampled other than quahogs. And just for the record, there are no traces of submerged aquatic vegetation, eelgrass or woodland grass found in the area. So the conclusions are that area B is good habitat. The proponents have willingly asked to bridge that area to stay away from that habitat. And area A, has production, but it's relatively low because of the age of these quahogs. That settlement could have been from 12 years ago. There's no seed, no cherry stones. They're all quahogs in that area. We look at, I don't know, Tim, can you pull up the exhibit that we were talking about of the sediment type? Jeff did this. It's pretty nice. If you look at the sample points with the circles around, the dotted circles, that's all the muddy habitat. So you can see there's a little bit of a diagonal to the bottom where it's all mud, seawood, and only a few muddy spots shoreward of that line. And that line is right at the break between the two areas. So pretty much it. Anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, did you have something to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Glenn Wood, Rubin and Redmond, good evening. Just a brief couple comments. In particular, relative to the case law that we cited and in reviewing the staff report. I was involved personally in both of the two cases that we cite in our letter to the Conservation Commission. The Olson project, which is on the other side of this pond, but south of the bridge. And then the Adams dock project, which is about 10 plus or minus properties to the north. Interestingly, what we've found over the years, and I frankly haven't done a dock project in Falmouth in some number of years. The last recession really, I think, shut that down to some extent. But what we found in this survey through Paul's work is very similar to other projects I've been involved in the past, whether that was with Holmes and McGrath or Mike Briselli and LEC, dating myself here. But from a dock siting perspective, the west side of this pond is very appropriate for docks because what we find is we do have some viable shellfish habitat due to substrate in the inner areas, as Paul's survey shows. But then when we get out to a certain point, it really ramps off both with depth, which is good for the boat use, and water depth, but also we get into black and oxic mud, and that's exactly what Paul found. And interestingly, in the Adams project, that's the exact same survey that we found at this property a bit further to the north. And what we did is using what we've learned from many years of the past, we came up with this design where we're actually fully bridging with no pilings anywhere within Area B. And then we have the 35-foot distance to the mooring area where the dock, or where the float, or I'm sorry, where the terminal end of the dock is and where the boat would be, to address the depth issues under the Falmouth wetlands regulations. And so, what the Adams dock, in fact, and decision is very completely on point, because it exactly tracks the survey that Paul found. And it shows that if we're bridging over the area where there is quote unquote significant shellfish habitat, that there's no adverse impacts, and therefore the siting of the dock and the boat use in the deeper water where we have the black anoxic mud in Area A is an entirely reasonable project. So we do think that there are lessons to be learned from those cases and those decisions. They are dated, but Adams surely is under your existing regulations that date back to August of '98. So we think we've put together a really strong application, and we look forward to your review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Jim, you all set?
Yes, I'm all set. We'll address any concerns that staff or the board members have.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So you've all received Chuck's statements. So they were also written into the staff report. So Tim, you got those, and for some reason, Mr. Martinson said he didn't receive your hard submittal to them, Tim. So I don't know what happened. That's why they came in fairly late. Because he said he never received the packet. So I don't know what happened there.
All right,
You may want to check on that.
Yeah, I'll talk with Jeff, but I know we sent it to
Yeah.
them and
The holidays, there's been a lot of, pandemic related issues going on with all different offices and everything. So
Understand.
So we got those. Late. But Mr. Martinson did a comment on the conditions, when it's harvested, that it's harvested, it's open for recreational and commercial shell fishing. And that it has a substrate that recruits, seasonally has the substrate that recruits a natural set of shellfish. And I'm assuming he's talking about where you found your more significant levels of shellfish, which is in that zone B, which is outside of that 35 area of the mooring field. So if you were in the 35 feet of the mooring field, and you had that significant shellfish density, which Paul has determined that you don't, obviously the regulations say that the dock would be prohibited. When you're in the 50-foot, the dock may be allowed. The board does have to weigh some other factors, but provided you submit a shellfish mitigation plan. And that's one of the things we found lacking in the application, Tim, and I was wondering if you could explain that. I know you're saying that you're bridging the area, but it's not just the, it's the almost like the benthic changes that happen, like that microhabitat, those changes that happen when you start putting structures in. And although you're not putting those pilings right in that significant habitat, you are going to create shading. You are going to create an area for predators, for other fish to kind of school around. So I think a shellfish mitigation component to this application would go a long way. So I don't know if you could address that. And then just one final point, although Attorney Wood has, provided these court cases, they are fairly old. They're the set of facts, each case stands on its own merit. We just heard that in our last hearing. There are, I think, more recent cases, but I think that the shellfish density was in that 35-foot mooring field. So, I mean, the board can take those comments we just wanted to, point out that every case stands on its own merit. It does not, just because one court decision is made, it doesn't make it precedent, it doesn't make it binding case law, it doesn't do any of that. So it's used for persuasive arguments. So we just want you to be aware of that. Because this board does have a lot of different, and it's not just this case, it was the case before this one. We have a lot of, court cases that are brought to our attention to persuade us to, vote one way or another. And we just have to look at the facts of each case. In this case, is the area significant? What's the history of the shellfish? The historical use of this area. Is it currently used? What the impacts will be. And I think those are our only questions, Mr. Chairman, or comments at this point.
All right, Mr. Newton, do you have anything to add to that?
I have no additional comment, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. O'Brien, we're going to start with you.
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Mark?
You had mentioned, among other possible issues, shading from that long ramp. I can't look at from the drawing. I can't see anything whether it says it might be a totally opaque ramp or a partially translucent, transparent ramp. Is there any comment from you, Tim?
I'll let Paul talk to it too, but that it's oriented to a true kind of like east-west type of location. So we feel would be minimal shading beneath that. It would be a typical, it's going to be an aluminum type ramp. There's no specific design yet as far as whether it would be some type of wood decking or an aluminum decking. We work with the contractor that's constructing that. I know Paul's familiar with that type of walkway as well, so he might be able to help me out with that aspect of the construction side of it. But we felt the location and the orientation with as far as shading goes would be very minimal. So I don't know if Paul, if you specifically, the other ones that you've worked with, what type of material?
Most of the ones I've seen are an open aluminum grid. Like you said, the shading is going to be minimal because of the orientation. It's the east-west orientation. The sun's going to come from the east, south, and southwest and west. So it's going to get, the sun's going to get underneath. So it's not a marsh issue. Shellfish really don't care about sunlight. They don't need any sunlight. I mean, yeah, you might insignificantly affect the amount of phytoplankton in the water underneath the ramp, but it moves around with the tide every 5 minutes later somewhere else. So it's shellfish and sunlight. There's no correlation. Grow in the dark.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And Maury's not back yet.
Maury,
Okay.
are you with us?
I am.
Okay, all right. She's
Oh.
with us, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
just not on video. I'm here, but I'm not on.
Oh, okay.
I listen to you. all.
You're here, but you're not all there. All right, you're up for comments.
Maury, you're up.
There you are.
Where's she going?
He's muted.
All right, now I'm there.
There she is.
I'm back. And I'm not
There you
on
are.
fire.
Thank you.
Um,
Good thing.
Yeah.
No, all projects stand on their own merit, and I would have to agree with Jen on this one that with reading the Shellfish Warden's report gave me a good insight. Thank you.
All right. Pat?
So maybe you can clarify something for me. I've looked at various drawings, and it's unclear to me if you're measuring the length of the dock under our regulations from the mean high water, or if you're measuring it from the salt marsh. Can you clarify?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll pull it back up.
Sure.
It's from the mean high water. Just give me a second, please. It's measured from the mean high water, which is actually slightly higher up on the riprap than from the salt marsh. So that, if you've been to the site and look under the existing wooden pier, obviously the salt marsh is lower than where the mean high water comes on the pier. But it's measured from the mean high water mark on the pier out to the terminus end. So it's actually, the mean high water is actually more restrictive than the landward edge of the salt marsh. Does that
Right,
make sense?
Yeah, and when I was out there, I saw some algae on some of the rocks in the revetment and was kind of guessing where the mean high water might be. But what I'm struck by is I look at your cross section and it looks as if the dock measured from the mean high water out to the float exceeds 100 feet. You note on this cross section 107 feet.
Well, the 107 is measured from the landward edge of the existing wooden dock.
Okay. And how many feet do you take off to get to the mean high water?
I believe that would be 7 feet.
Good answer. Okay, I have no other questions.
And I apologize, I wasn't trying to say that in a rude way, if it came off that way, because I just realized.
It might be helpful. It looks like this. Are you planning to continue this?
I think we probably would continue it if staff and the commission members are looking for the mitigation type plan, and I believe Jen's looking for that, so I'm assuming the board members would be looking for that.
When you submit the amended plans, could you also address my concern?
Yes.
Thank you.
Peter,
Pat addressed my concern. No further comments.
excellent. Steve?
Thank you. I had a question about the length and that was answered. Thank you.
Courtney?
Actually, my question is more for Jen. It seems to me over the time I've been on the commission, and it's now a long time, is that we have seen projects similar to this in the past where the applicant has attempted to bridge a shellfish area to get far enough out to build his dock or have his dock. Is that, am I dreaming, or is that, or have we actually had that? And in those cases, if we did, how did we rule?
I'd have to go back and look into that, Courtney. Yes, you have had dock structures that have attempted to bridge salt marsh islands. You've had dock projects attempting to bridge soft shell clam habitat in particular. It really depends on where those significant densities are in the grid of the dock, on whether or not you have allowed the dock to be installed or not. If the significant densities of those shellfish were in the 35 feet of the mooring field, this board, I think, pretty consistently has said when those significant shellfish are within the 50 feet, as in this case, so it's outside of that 35 feet of the mooring field, the board has allowed some docks to kind of be built and bridge that area.
Okay.
You have to look at that. You have to look at, the mitigation that an applicant is proposing. In this case, that's what the staff is looking for. We need to see what kind of mitigation package the applicant would be offering to kind of fully, weigh the impacts versus the mitigation. And we're missing that critical piece. And then again, you look at historic use, current use, you weigh in the Shellfish Constable's comments. So you take all of that, Court.
Okay.
But I'm not saying if they provide a shellfish mitigation package, the staff's gonna, say that, we recommend it. We have to view the whole project in its totality, and we're missing that piece right now.
No, and I mean, I think were we to allow it, I certainly would want to have light penetrating decking and that kind of stuff.
I think with the sand, with the area of sand in there, and Paul, you can kind of, correct me if I'm wrong. I think maybe Chuck's concerns are gonna be the soft shell in that area. Because that's a dwindling resource in Falmouth, and one that I know he is very protective of in this, and so is the staff.
And Paul, and so that gets to my question, Paul, if I recall your testimony, you said you did not find any soft shell clams, only just shells?
No living, but
Yeah.
it's good habitat. I agree with Chuck. It has had soft shell clams in the recent past that were probably dug out. Shellfish recruitment for soft shells especially is very episodic. You can have 5 or 6 years with nothing. It could appear, they dig it out. It may not happen for 10 years, it may happen the next year. So, I agree fully with his findings, and he probably agrees with mine. It's good soft shell habitat. They're not gonna come every year. There's good cohogs here too, especially in that transitional area where it goes to muddy sand, sandy mud. Once you get into the deep mud, a lot less productive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Tim, I'd like to say they did a fantastic job staking that.
They weren't too happy. They went out there a couple of times to stake it for the shellfish survey, and then they got taken away, and then they had to go back out in the water again. So they weren't very happy with me, but
Well, they did a good job.
it makes it a lot easier for you guys. I know that.
Yeah, it does. It does. So thank you for that.
Jamie, I just need to tell you that Maury needed to go again, the fire department. There's something going on, so she needs
Is
to.
there any in the public chat function?
I don't believe, let me check, there are any public chats regarding this particular project.
Well,
Nope,
I didn't
not
have
this
this.
one. Okay,
No?
not on this project.
All right. All right, Tim, what are you thinking?
We'd like to request a continuance. And what about like the 17th or the 24th? Are you meeting those weeks, Jen?
Oh, you're gonna make me decide right now. I haven't set that schedule. I promised I would do it. Yes, let's see. Hang on 1 second, Tim.
Just trying not to get on the 3rd.
No, that's fine. How about, let me do something. How about the 24th, Tim?
Excellent.
I know this group has been looking for me to set a day off, so I think I'm gonna choose that 17th. So how about the 24th of February, correct?
That's perfect.
All right, thank you.
The request of the applicant, I move that we continue this hearing until the 24th of February.
Harris, second.
We have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until February 24th. So if there's no further comments or questions. All right. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark? Mark?
Greeny, aye.
Thank you. And Maury's out.
Yeah, Maury
Pat?
had to go for right now.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
All right. This hearing is continued until February 24th. Thank you, Mr. Santos, Mr. Caruso, Mr. Wood.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen,
See everybody next week.
bye, Tim.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well.
Make sure you tell Betsy that.
All right. Next up, Sarah Camugas Young and Leighton Felker Young III, 10 Quahog Pond Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a new deck and to conduct invasive species and non-native species management. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, give me 1 second. I am promoting Jen Crawford up and most likely promoting Jen Crawford and I saw David. Where did he go? David Martin up to present the project. Jen, is there anyone else I'm presenting up for your project team? Nope, you're on mute.
Good evening. No one else presenting other than David
Okay,
and I.
excellent. Thank you.
All right, you guys ready to go?
Yes, please.
All right, excellent. So it's a pretty simple project, so I will try to keep this short and sweet, especially considering the time. For the record, Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management here representing the applicant, along with David Martin. The property, the entire property sits within the Black Beach and Sipawissa Marsh DCPC. The western third of the property, this property directly abuts the Shining Sea Bikeway. So the western third of the property lies within the A and B zone to the top of Bank, which is off property and on the other side of the bike path. The existing house and the deck are both outside of the buffer zone. They are only within the AE flood zone and the DCPC. The naturalized areas, they go along the north side of the property and along the west side of the property. The rest of the property is either driveway or unirrigated lawn with a few scattered trees. The tree species on the property are all native. There are no invasive tree species here. The understory of the naturalized areas is dominated mostly by shrub, honeysuckle, and bittersweet. There are some pockets of native understory species, mostly sumac. Those we tried to identify and outline on the plan for you so you can kind of see the general area of them. So that really covers the existing conditions. It's a small property, pretty simple. The project proposes 2 things. It proposes a deck expansion. The deck expansion does remain outside of the buffer zone, but again is within the AE flood zone and the DCPC. The project also proposes invasive species management throughout the property and to restore those areas with native shrub species. Going back to the deck expansion that's proposed, the only regulations and performance standards that the deck is subject to are the DCPC regs. As I attempted to detail for you in the project narrative, the calculations that we did for the total cumulative resource area impacts, they did assume a 15-foot clear area of vegetation all the way around the house. And so that area was taken into account with those overall disturbance calculations. And so that area then was also taken into account with the 10% of the area to be revegetated. For the DCPC regs, most of that extra area of revegetation we did locate within the buffer zone, partially within the 50 and then the outer buffer zone to add contiguous naturalized vegetation to the already existing naturalized area on that western edge of the property. The specifics regarding the invasive species management and how we would do it and what it would be replaced with are detailed in both the land management plan and then on the restoration plan that we submitted to you. Honestly, that kind of sums it up from my end. So I am happy to try and answer your questions.
All right. David, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, at this time.
All right. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, had a conversation with Jen this afternoon. Jen, there's one thing I want to mention that I forgot to mention this afternoon, but anyway,
Yep.
I'll mention it. Just has to do with the sweet Gale. It's a restoration plan. We spoke about removing that in order to put the deck kind of cutting back that vegetation to put the deck. Staff has some concerns because usually when we're citing projects, we want to be able to make sure that there's a 15-foot buffer around the house, especially in the DCPC. But that doesn't necessarily mean you cut the buffer back to create that or that vegetation back to create it. We kind of talk through that. So we'll have to see what the board says about that. Unfortunately, that area is already cleared, as many of you know. So Jen, did you get any information on why they cleared that before?
I did actually. I had talked to the applicant about it, and they had said that they've owned the property for quite a few years now. They had said that when they had bought the property, they were able to get all the way around the house, and that it had overgrown in the last few years with a lot of vines, which would be consistent with what we observed there was the bittersweet vines. They said that they were actually growing into their bedroom windows, and there's like remnants on their screens. And so they said that they just simply cut the vines back from that side of the house so that they could egress around the house again. There was no treatments or anything like that done to the vegetation in that area. They just cut it back, and that was it.
Well, unfortunately, we can't determine whether or not it was vines or something else because they've kind of removed it, and they really did take out some. If you've seen it, I don't know if you had a chance to go back out there. We can show you pictures. I think they might have added some to the staff report. It was a pretty large area. Not that we would have said, we don't want, vines growing into someone's windows, but, they really did. They're in a very sensitive area, and your clients do need to understand that, anything they do on the property is subject to this commission's review.
Correct.
The only other thing, Dave, you never staked out the deck.
Oh, that would be my fault.
Oh,
I
okay.
take fault for that.
I'll share that. Maybe there was a misunderstanding between myself
okay.
and
So
Jen.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that was my fault. Dave and I had talked about the staking piece. That is totally my fault. And if you need me to do that, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, one of the commissioners had texted me after I spoke with you that it wasn't staked. So I just want to make sure that gets staked. And if there's any way to reduce the America Gale, it's just such a low growing plant, or at least maybe 50% and just add some bulkier vegetation because you are removing a lot of habitat over there. That would be preferable to the staff. Other than that, I don't believe we have. Oh, and Jen, could you come up with a monitoring program for us as well in the DCPC?
Yes, I can. That's not a problem.
Perfect.
I know you had mentioned that. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. So I appreciate that. And those are my only comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Steve, we'll start with you. Steve, you're muted. You're on mute.
My only comment was going to be good luck, but I don't really have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Courtney?
No questions.
Kevin?
I feel better. I couldn't find the outline for the deck, so now I know why I didn't find it.
Yeah, that was
Other
me.
than that, no comments.
Mark?
I don't have any comments.
Pat?
No comments.
Peter?
No comments.
All right. Then public comments?
Yes, so at the beginning of the hearing, the staff received an email from Mr. Rodenheiser, I believe, is the next door neighbor, and I have an email that he would like me to read to the board, as well as a number of chats in the chat function. So I'll start with the email that did come in at 7 o'clock this evening. It said, "To whom it may concern, we are John and Sarah Elmer, neighbors of the Youngs directly to the north. The backyard of our property and deck directly faces the area specified for the Young's proposed deck. John originally designed and built the Young's home according to a site plan intended to provide for outdoor living space, allowing each resident to enjoy their outdoor space without encroachment or disturbance of the adjacent neighbors. It is our feeling that it would be wise to consider constructing the new deck off the kitchen as it was originally intended, as there are no neighbors at all to the south, and the adjacent neighbor to the east is significantly farther away than is our property. The deck in this location would also be in much closer proximity to the outdoor shower. Although we are not prone to creating noise, we do use our deck continuously in the summertime and would be as concerned about disturbing the Youngs as they might be about disturbing us. We raised the issue because we have already experienced noise this past summer and this winter from the Young's family members well past midnight, on one occasion almost till 3 a.m. We would very much like to be on good terms with our new neighbors, and we would like to be on the same page with regard to respecting each other's privacy and ability to enjoy outdoor time throughout the year. Thank you for this consideration. We look forward to a good relationship with the Young family, Sarah and John." And then I read that into the record. That's the other thing. That's the other one. Give me 1 second. And then the chat from Mr. Rodenheiser. "I'm really concerned about the size of the deck exceeds the footprint of the house, and we are concerned that the plantings proposed will not replace the green wall of vegetation that existed." And yes, I was going to read the letter. So those are the chats in the email that came in. Jen, is that where's the America Gale? Oh, there's the America Gale.
Yeah, it's on the
It's on the edge, yeah.
Yeah, on the edge facing the house, not on the property edge.
So you've got the Clethra and the Viburnum over on that end.
Yep.
As well as those two, what are they, witch hazels?
Yeah, there's 3 larger witch hazel on that end of where the house is closest to the property line.
Okay. So maybe you could explain that vegetation scheme over there for the abutter? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So basically we used against the property line to the north and where the vegetation wraps around on the east side, we use large shrubs, the viburnum, I guess there's a little other aronia, but mostly the viburnum, the witch hazel, the clethra, because those species would be growing on the, actually they're growing on the south side of the adjacent property, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're very large species that can get at maturity anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall. In this location, I would assume that they would eventually probably get that high, 6 feet for sure. The witch hazel will get even taller. So I think that based on the species that we observed in that area being a lot of vine species and honeysuckle species, they should be fairly consistent with the size of the vegetation that's already there. There are no trees coming out with this project at all, so there will be no sort of canopy reduction or anything like that. In fact, we're adding trees on the, granted it's on the southern side and on the western side, but yeah, if that's helpful, I hope that's helpful.
And you're on mute.
Sorry, the only thing I wanted to add for the neighbor is, the commission looks at the impacts of the proper, impacts of a project on the property. The deck expansion does fit within the DCPC regulations. And the commission doesn't get into, designing a project or relocating decks unless they impact a wetland buffer zone or anything. The deck appears to be, in a predominantly lawn area. So, we would not be asking the applicant to redesign the deck unless the commission wants to have them reduce it on that side and add that vegetation that was removed. But I believe that ecological, when calculated that removal of that 15 feet and then added it back into those DCPC regulations, so that was accounted for in the planting scheme. Correct, Jen?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my only comments, Mr. Chairman. There is one additional chat. Can they plant taller plants to start?
We have specified on the plans, most of the shrubs going in as number 3s, with the exception of 2 of them that were specified at number 1s. But that is, they do have some of those species larger, but that is a function also of budget and the approval of the commission.
What was the last part, Jen?
Pardon?
You said budget and what?
And the discretion of the commissioners.
Hey.
Anything else, Jen?
No.
All right. Ms. Crawford, what are you thinking?
In terms of the things that you have asked me for with staking the deck, which again, I apologize, reducing the Myrica Gale and switching some of those out for another species, and then proposing a monitoring program. Those are the 3 things that I have on my list. And if those are the only 3 things, that I can turn around to you rather quickly. So I would prefer to continue to the next available hearing date, if that is amenable.
Jen, if I put you on the 3rd, could you get everything to us by next Wednesday? Or is that
next one? Nope, I can do that.
You sure?
I am positive, yes.
Okay.
I will make it happen.
And kind of look at the plants over on that thing. So
I will. I'll make sure that I go down and stake the deck out myself.
Cohog Lane.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
make a suggestion that perhaps the applicant uses this time, since there are some issues of dealing with the neighbors that aren't strictly conservation, but perhaps some adjustments to the plan, particularly in terms of planning and that kind of thing, can be worked out so that everybody's happy and the thing can move forward. I think that would be good as well, although that's certainly outside of our purview.
David and I will both, I think, be in touch with the applicant after the hearing to discuss some of the comments.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep.
So what did I say, February 3rd?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Do we have a request for continuance till 2/3?
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Harris, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until February 3rd. Is there any other comments? All right, Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury, sorry, Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
All right, this hearing is continued until February 3rd. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Dave. Why don't we have a little? Okay, perfect.
Right. Next up, Town of Falmouth, Department of Public Works, 0 Minot Road, parcel 45-20-002-000, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct beach nourishment to construct 2 rubble mound groins and to install 2 handicap parking spaces.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted John Ramsey, Trey Ruthin, and Jim McLaughlin up to present the project. Gentlemen, is there anybody else I'm promoting up for the town's project team?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, excellent.
All right, Mr. McLaughlin, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm James McLaughlin, town engineer, and we also have with us our consultant from Applied Coastal. And before turning it over to them, I just wanted to talk briefly about the handicap parking spaces. I know that that's been an issue of concern, and I did want to point out first that the spaces and the emergency access that we're proposing are within the right-of-way of Minot Road. As you know, the old Minot Road where the old bridge exists now that we're proposing to remove. The roadway itself is still in place, and the right-of-way for Minot Road goes from the old section all the way up north to the Noah roadway. That entire area is part of the right-of-way of Minot Road, and that's where we're proposing to install the handicap accessible parking spaces. Those spaces are proposed as 2 spaces perpendicular to the existing roadway, the old Minot Road. And between the 2 spaces, we'd have an 8-foot wide aisle that's compliant with both AAB and ADA requirements and would allow for 2 handicap spaces to pull in and park there and provide access to the beach utilizing the existing old roadway. We're also proposing to utilize that old roadway for emergency access and to prevent other vehicles from accessing it. We're proposing a gate across the roadway. Right now, there are boulders across at the closest point to Foster Road. So we'd be moving the gate beyond where the boulders are and locating the spaces immediately off of that section beyond where the existing boulders are. We also included in our submission to the commission some background information regarding these items and their consistency with previous agreements that were made back in 2007 when the adjacent property, the Haddad property on Foster Road, was purchased by unanimous vote of town meeting in April of 2007. At that time, there was an agreement between the funding for that was from 3 sources. One, the 300 Committee, Community Preservation, and Town Meeting Funds. So there were 3 participants in the funding of that purchase, and they all signed onto an agreement with the CPC that agreed to provide 2 handicap spaces, emergency access, as well as a drop-off area and a turnaround area and bike rack. All those improvements were anticipated to be within the Haddad property itself or utilizing a portion of Foster Road has access to the Haddad property for those purposes. What we're proposing to do is meet some of those requirements within the town right of way and not utilize the Haddad property for that. Subsequent to the purchase and that agreement between CPC and the funding parties, the beach committee, town of Falmouth, and the 300 committee, there was also a conservation restriction placed on the Haddad property, and that incorporated the provisions to be able to accommodate all of those same improvements that I've mentioned. So what we're proposing with these parking spaces and this emergency access is to meet some of those goals that were agreed upon back in 2007 and do it without impacting the Haddad property itself and keeping it entirely within the existing layout of Monot Road. So I just wanted to, and so we provide a fair amount of backup on that earlier acquisition, just to give you an idea of why we're proposing these particular enhancements to the beach nourishment plan. And from the perspective of, certainly from Public Works, is these are incidental improvements to the project. And you know, we feel an appropriate application for these types of things, given the work that's going to be expended in terms of expanding the beach and making improvements to a public recreation project. And with that, I'd turn it over to John and Trey and ask them to continue on with the discussion regarding the beach nourishment itself.
Great, thanks, Jim, and thank you, Commission. I'm going to actually try to share my screen here and go through a short presentation, and I'm really going to focus on just the questions that you had, as opposed to going and revisiting the entire project again. But I did want to go through at least a couple of the issues that Jim had mentioned in a slightly different format. So as far as the project goes, you've seen this before, but I do want to sort of talk through all of the items associated with the project. When we had presented this earlier, we had just really touched on the main issues, which is really the groin reconstruction, some of the structure trading issues, and obviously the 22,000 cubic yard nourishment. And obviously those are the big components, and those are still listed here. But I did want to make sure that we talk about some of the others. We are looking at this is not just a recreation project. We are looking at this as a shore protection project. We are trying to maintain Monot Road. So one of the things we're trying to do is bring that beach elevation and volume back up to something that's sustainable. And the elevation, basically it's slightly above the elevation of the parking lot, is about 5 feet above mean sea level, or NAVD. And that's also approximately the elevation of Monot Road as well. So you're looking at an elevation of a beach. There's no point in trying to get the elevation of this beach well above that. There are dunes behind here that are going to break some waves as well. But the beach itself naturally wants to be somewhere in that elevation, and that's consistent with the elevation of the beach east of the inlet. Obviously, we have a time of year restriction. That's one of the things that we talked about last time. This is something that between plovers and fisheries issues that we have to deal with. One of the things that we may be trying to do when we go to the Corps is potentially expanding that back so that we can start construction in October. And obviously, if we can start stockpiling, et cetera, in the parking lot, that's not in an area where some of the other issues occur, then we would try to potentially look at that. We're very cognizant of the bird issues as well as the fisheries issues. So we'll work with the other agencies, and if we do come back, we would at least ask you for, if you have any issues with that right now, to at least let us know, so that we don't get approved by other agencies and then come back and have you guys indicate that you don't want to see that. But what we might be looking for is potentially the month of October as well. So one of the things we had talked a bit about last time was the removal of the existing building foundations. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but one of the reasons why they're not shown very specifically on the plans is for the very reason that we find this a challenge, is this beach is eroding so quickly that more and more of the foundations keep becoming exposed. We specifically see that in the foundation, the building foundation that's there. We've seen parts of it just this past year come up that were not exposed last year. And so we don't want to very specifically say what we would like to do, but we'd like to make sure that we're working with the Conservation Commission staff to make sure all of that is removed. I know that the DPW is committed to removing the bridge and all the structure associated with it, the old bridge, and then also getting as much of the foundation, if not all of the foundation, and certainly everything that's exposed out of there. There's obviously a lot of wood piles and other accoutrements associated with that, and there may be some water lines, et cetera, that we need to deal with. I know in the past, the Conservation Commission has dealt with the asbestos-lined water line that was along the old roadway. We anticipate that we're going to run into this under the bridge. And the town obviously knows that it's a hazardous waste issue and is going to be something that is going to be a little bit costly to remove, but they are committed to go forward with that process when we remove the bridge, that we remove all of that as well. And as Jim had mentioned, this incorporation of 2 handicap parking spaces, the plan has been modified slightly, so the parking does not come directly off, or the parking spaces do not back into Foster Road, but they're actually put in the old Minot Road footprint, and I'll show that on the plan in just a second. And then he also mentioned the installation of a gate. So obviously one of the things we're looking at doing is maintaining that, the existing old layout of the road so that there can be emergency access down here. And once the bridge is gone, and obviously filling that area in, and it's still going to be a sand road going down to the beach, but it's going to be wide enough for vehicular access. But again, there's going to be a gate back at the end to prevent anyone from actually coming down it unless it's used for an emergency. So this is the overall site plan that you've seen before. The only difference here is these spaces. Now, when you come down Foster Road, you would actually come down Old Minot Road, and the spaces would be a turn in this way. And as Jim had mentioned, there's an 8-foot area between, so that it's ADA compatible. And then you also see that, so obviously the rocks at the end of the road would be removed. And then this gate would be placed, allowing vehicles to back up and then go forward back out onto Foster Road and back out to the existing Minot Road. So that's, again, so that should at least alleviate some of the concerns regarding people having to back out onto Foster Road. And then the other issue, one of the things that come up when we got some comments from the commission, were about making sure that we include some beach profiles. Oh, sorry, we'll talk about potential planting first. I moved these slides around as we were going. So one of the questions came up was about planting the actual beach berm. And this actually came up in planting, potential planting in the beach berm, where there's going to be nourishment to the east of the inlet as associated with the bridge project. And in a similar case, we reached out and if you have any questions about this, it was actually Trey who talked to Amy Honig at Natural Heritage. And basically, because this is plover habitat, they don't want to see planting on the beach berm itself. They wanted to leave that barren for the plovers. And on the other hand, one thing they did indicate that obviously they know we're taking these foundations out. They're actually pretty excited about that. And they would certainly allow, when these foundations are taken out, restoration of the dune area, and that area could be replanted. And obviously we would want some more of a contiguous dune as shore protection as well. So, that is a kind of a win-win for everybody. But I think that is where Natural Heritage looks at this as, they don't want to have any adverse impacts to the bird habitat. So they're basically suggesting, or will require that we don't either plant or put sand fencing actually up on the beach berm itself. So one of the questions that come up was about beach profiles, and I just wanted to point everybody to our sheet, the S101 sheet. And while the groin profiles are on here, that's the flat profile that goes out here, the beach profiles are also on here. The beach elevation, the berm part is about 1 foot above the groin, and then it slopes off at a 1-on-10 slope all the way basically to the tip of the groin to meet at the tip of the groin down at where the intersects with the existing bottom. In that same beach profile, you see it on the lower one as well, that same beach profile exists all along the shoreline. So you basically see the same beach width, beach berm width at an elevation of 5, and then sloping down to the existing seafloor, which is in this area. Obviously for folks that have been out there a lot, the offshore area is quite shallow. So as far as the upland structure removal goes, as I said, the town's committed to this. These are actually pictures just from this past week. And I was kind of amazed at how much more of the foundation, specifically the house foundation on the top there, is exposed. And there appears to be like a secondary foundation that's not becoming exposed behind it as well. So I think, obviously the town is committed to taking all of this out. There are now, I've seen some now old water lines, rusted water lines that are in there, old, obviously there's wood piles. So what we're really looking to do is break this up with a hammer and then remove this material and then pull the piles. I expect that some of the piles may break, but we should be able to either pull them out or use some water to work them around and remove them. We do on these typical bridge abutments typically also have wood piles. We don't have the plans for this bridge. At least I don't have the foundation plans. But we anticipate when we start breaking that concrete up and pulling that we're going to run into a similar situation. And keep in mind that this foundation, and especially the bridge foundation, is going to be buried in nourishment if we didn't remove it. But we are going to remove as much as we possibly can get at. And certainly all the concrete's going to go. I just don't know if we're going to be able to get down to all of the piles, but any pile that we can get at the time when we're doing the excavation for pulling out that concrete, that will be removed as well. The bridge deck will be gone, and obviously the water line with that, and the other abutment, which is behind there, which is further to the west, will also be removed. So one of the other issues that came up in our October meeting and has been discussed a bit was the concept of monitoring. Originally, we were just going to be monitoring the beach face with transects and ensuring that those transects were performed every year. And we're looking at actually expanding those transects back to make sure that they include the dune as requested. And that's from transects 4 to transect 11. If you can see on the plan there, that those actually will go back behind the dune. The transects 1, 2, and 3 actually will go to the upland. And those will be monitored, as I said, every year. And reports will be submitted to the Conservation Commission on the first year, third year, and fifth year, unless we see major changes or the Conservation Commission would like to see an annual report. And as we talked about the methodology, it's pretty straightforward. This is something we do all the time. We usually use RTK, so it's just so we set a back station and we set a front station to get in line, and then we just basically take a measurement just about every 5 feet going down the face of the beach. And then for the offshore portion, that the person doing the hydrographic portion of the survey would actually put it in their software to actually have the line and actually run the line with similar equipment. And the other aspect of this monitoring that was requested was to expand the monitoring to include the area inside Bourne's Pond. Obviously, there has been some history with concerns over past nourishments that may have deposited material in on the shoal there. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. We believe that this project is designed to not encourage that. But at the same time, that to be on the safe side, we're looking to include that in the monitoring. And so that green grid that you see is our proposed bathymetric monitoring grid. It's 100-foot spaced lines in both directions. And we would be able to basically create the kind of map that you see on the right here. That's for a different area. That would be kind of the erosion accretion that you would see. And this is just a change. So if we have 1 year measurement, we would see the depth contours. When we get the second year, then we subtract the two surfaces and you get a map like you see on the right, where in this case, blue was erosion and red is accretion, but that erosion is because that area was dredged. But it's just a comparison of two bathymetry surveys. But that's the type of thing that we would be looking to create to give the commission not only the data, but the visualization as to what's happening. And again, all this monitoring, we're looking at doing it for a 5-year period. And obviously, if some massive changes occur, and the commission certainly can extend that monitoring if they feel the need. We anticipate that this nourishment should perform the way we expect, and that we shouldn't see an increase in shoaling within Bourne's Pond. Some questions were asked about the grain size. This is something we presented last time, expanded on a little bit, but this was something that was in our environmental notification form. We are committed to making sure that we're bringing in compatible sediment. One of the things that one of the places we want to get the sediment from is actually the widening of the inlet project. But if that sediment does not test and does not determine to be as coarse or coarser than the existing material, we will not be using it, and that material would then be placed on the beach to the east. But if it does meet the standards, then we would probably get up to 1/3 of the volume for the project from that inlet widening. The remaining material, whatever it ends up being, would need to be trucked in. And that would be because by the time that's trucked in, the bridge will probably have been removed, as this is part of the ongoing bridge reconstruction project. So all that material would come in, through roads from the west side of the project. So we would be checking grain size every 1,000 cubic yards. It's pretty standard for us to do that. We have not determined the specific source, but we have determined what the gradation will need to be. So we would be looking for somebody to match that gradation, and part of that gradation requirements would be less than basically 5% fines. So this is not going to create a turbidity issue, and it will be compatible with what exists at the beach now. A lot was discussed last time about construction sequence, and I just wanted to sort of reiterate what we had put in our memo to you on December 9th. And just to go through and keep in mind that this is basically something that is intended to be linked with the inlet widening project that's occurring to the east at the same time, because the road's going to be closed during that basically a 2-year time period. So once the road's closed, we would be looking at, starting with removing the existing bridge remnants and remove and dispose of the wooden superstructure, break up the abutments, pull existing timber piles. And when I say to the extent practicable, obviously there may come to a situation where we can't, we're going to cause more damage than good. Obviously we're going to do everything we can to get all of the structure out. And we certainly will be getting all of the concrete of the abutments out. It's just a question of whether we can reach the piles. For the building foundations, we'll be breaking up that concrete, removing those. And it appears that we should be able to remove all of those piles and anything that's associated with those structures as well. Then we'd be stockpiling the sand from digging the inlet over on the Minot West Beach parking area. And just I might as well throw this out here now before somebody I know there's probably a lot of people in the chat room. Somebody's going to ask about our access to the project. We are not going to be using the access off Foster Road. All roadway access to the project will be through the parking lot. So we're not using Foster Road at all. And then for the existing derelict structures, and that's the ones that are highlighted in yellow there, we will be removing what we can reach from the beach, and then we'll be using some beach nourishment material to build out to the structure so that we can reach it and pull it. So that will be being pulled out as we're basically generating some of the beach nourishment as we're moving. And I would also say that number 4 and probably number 5 here, we will be being done concurrently, which is building the groins at the same time we are removing some of those derelict structures. And so obviously as part of that, depending on where the nourishments come from, we are going to also be stockpiling other nourishment material. The eastern groin will be the groin that's constructed first, and then we'll be building the nourishment basically from east to west. And then we'll construct the western groin. And again, while 8 looks like it's separate, we will be nourishing as, once the eastern groin's constructed, we'll be starting to place the nourishment east of there as well as starting west of theirs as well. And then after that nourishment's in place, we'll restore all the dune areas to basically the pre-construction topography, and we'll plant the beach grass for any of those areas that are disturbed. And again, it's very difficult for us to say exactly how much area is going to be disturbed and whether it's in a dune or not, depending on how the erosion occurs over the next year or so. And then, this unvegetated footpath that we're talking about is also going to be that emergency access. So we're going to maintain at least a vehicle width for that walking path that's along the old Minot Road. And then we will, clear off the pavement of that historic portion of Minot Road immediately east of Foster Road, and then install those 2 demarcated handicap parking spaces and the gate that Jim talked about. So with that, I just wanted to make that as quick as possible. I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions, and I thought I'd open it up that way. It'd probably be easier to discuss.
Thank you. All right, John, if you would, you can stop screen sharing.
You think I can? No, I can. Okay.
Ray, do you have anything to add to that?
No. Thank you.
All right. All right. Jen?
I don't have much, Mr. Chairman. John, can you submit that PowerPoint to us? And thank you for expanding the monitoring into Bourne's Pond. I know that's going to be a concern. So can you submit that PowerPoint to him?
I would certainly submit the PowerPoint, and I think a lot of it was in the December 9th letter, but yes, I will make sure that's there. And
Thank you, and
yeah,
thank
no
you,
problem at
Tripp,
all.
for submitting another letter just to clarify. It's a lot of information for the city to go through and pick through. So, they just, so I appreciate that, to just kind of condense it into a letter and just address the questions, and that would.
Yep. And Jen, do you have the last PowerPoint? I mean, that we did in October, or do you?
I don't know, so send both of them, please.
I will do that.
And I just got booted off the server, so I can't even check. So, so thank you. So it's a really large project. There's a lot of moving parts. John, go back to your original statement about construction in October. So you're going to go to fisheries for a kind of a relief from their time of year?
It would probably just be a waiver of certain types of work. So the thing is, one of the things that discussing things with them, as long as we're not having silt producing work, sometimes they will give us that waiver. So it may just be groin construction that I'm allowed to do, as opposed to actual nourishment.
Okay, and that's fine. And what the staff would recommend is that we follow the Division of Marine Fisheries and all of the guidance from the state agencies. So if the state agencies feel it's appropriate to issue a waiver, then the staff is going to recommend that the commission follow suit and honor that waiver. That the specialized state agencies, are granting. So that's fine, and we can write that in, that if a waiver is granted, then obviously we will go with the waiver. Does that work for you?
That would definitely work.
Okay, all right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Newton, you have anything to add to that?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right. All right, Courtney.
I have no comments. I think this is a well thought out, complex project with lots of moving parts.
There is. Mr. O'Brien.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
It looks good to me.
That's all that matters. And Maury is still missing. Pat?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Peter?
It looks good to me also.
Excellent. Steve?
Thank you. And thanks, Jim, for opening with the discussion of the parking spaces. That has come up in the neighborhood. We got a letter from Davisville, and then Mr. Snyder's following this very carefully. And as a member of the CPC that originally offered this, acquired this property or submitted it to town council for consideration, it was important that we have the access. And to put it, I think, brilliantly into the Minot Road rather than into Foster Road is a way to resolve that issue. And I hope we can continue. Two more requirements is that we have the drop off and signage, which not a big deal, but just close out the CPC file as well as conservation. Thank you. We really would appreciate a little bit of fine sand on the beach and fewer cobbles, but we'll go with what you got. Thank you very much. It's a great project.
Excellent. All right. Jen, is there anything in public chat?
There is a public chat from Barbara Schneider. I appreciate the clear presentation and have hope that this will finally happen. It appears that the drop off may not be needed as the beach will be accessible unlike it is now. And that is what we have in chat function at this point, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to this? All right. What do you think?
Can I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement?
Heard, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close this hearing. If there's nothing else, I'm going to take the vote. All right. Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter? Peter?
Yes.
Mute.
Walsh, aye.
Thank you. Steve?
Pat and I.
All right. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you, Trey Ruthven.
Ruthven, yes,
Okay.
you got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. We got one close. All right, next up, continued request for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. AMP Solar Development, Inc., 41 and 48 Theater Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Request for confirmation of the following resource area boundaries and buffer zones: bordering vegetated wetland, isolated vegetated wetland, and potential vernal pool. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Claire Hugenboom, Evan Turner, I believe, and Raul to present the project. Is there anybody else, Claire, that I'm missing?
No, I believe
We've
you
got Evan,
everybody.
Raul, and you.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
And Chairman, if I could have permission to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Great. Let's go with that. Can everybody see the plan set on their screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So for the record, my name is Claire Hogeboom. I'm with LEC Environmental Consultants. And with us with the project teams, Evan Turner of AMP Solar Development, who is the applicant, and Lizardi Rivera of Cape and Island Engineering. They were the engineer on this and submitted the ANRAD application. I'm just going to take the lead on explaining the resource areas since LEC is the wetland scientist who did the delineation. So as you noted, we're seeking the confirmation of bordering vegetated wetlands, isolated vegetated wetlands, and potential vernal pool boundaries with this ANRAD application. So just to summarize very quickly, on August 6th of last year, we delineated the wetland boundaries and mean high water boundary to a potential vernal pool that's located within a survey area that you can see here on the plan. All the resource areas are shown in green here. We were designated a survey area that was identified for a potential future project location. We do understand there are other resource areas associated with Coonamessett Pond and Round Pond, but this particular application is just seeking the approval of the delineated wetlands shown on the plans. Now Cape and Island Engineering submitted the ANRAD application, and Mark Kasperzik, I hope I pronounced that right.
Kasperzik.
Kasperzik?
Yep.
Okay, I was close.
We were close.
He reviewed the wetland line on his own and then asked to meet me at the site subsequently just to review some lingering areas that he wanted to discuss with me in person. So as a result of that, we did make a couple of revisions in the field. So the plans that you see before you are the revised plans that accurately depict any revisions that Mark and I made in the field. So just to go over, I'll just briefly go over the overview of these wetlands and just touch very briefly on what we reviewed and any revisions we made. So where my cursor is highlighted here, we have a bordering vegetated wetland to Coonamessett Pond. That's an A series wetland. Over here, where my cursor is a B series wetland that contains a potential vernal pool. We flagged the mean high water associated with that potential vernal pool. There's a small C series isolated wetland here as well. That's within the fairway of the golf course on this site. Further down here where my cursor is another bordering vegetated wetland, an E series that is associated with a connection between Round Pond and Coonamessett Pond. Here's a smaller isolated vegetated wetland that's located within a depression in the forested portion between golf fairways. And then lastly, an isolated vegetated wetland located off-site on conservation land that contains a potential vernal pool as well. So I'm just going to zoom into a couple of these wetlands here just to discuss revisions. This A series that I first started with, Mark had no issues with the wetland line. We didn't change anything or revise anything there. I'll go to this sort of central area that holds the potential vernal pool. We have the B series wetland outlined in the green, and then the potential vernal pool The mean high water line associated with that is outlined in the dashed blue. Mark did have a couple of extra flags he wanted to add just to encompass all of the mean high water, which was perfectly fine. I agreed with him on all of his revisions there. So we just added a few flags to expand that. He had no revisions to our C series here, which you can see this lighter part of the aerial shows where the golf fairway is. So we had no revisions to that C series. Over here, I just want to briefly touch on this bordering vegetated wetland that is associated with a water feature that connects Round Pond and Coonamessett Pond. This feature is pretty much entirely inundated, so the bordering vegetated wetland is a relatively fringing wetland. The only revisions that I made in the field with Mark are to flag E22. You can see this sort of translucent polygon is where the line used to be. So we just moved the flag up a bit. And then the same goes for this flag E3. We moved a little bit. Lastly, let's see, we have this small isolated wetland in the depression, no changes made in the field. So lastly, we have this offsite isolated vegetated wetland that's on the conservation land. We initially had labeled it as bordering vegetated wetland, and Mark and I looked at it in the field and we both confirmed that it is in fact isolated and as such would function as a potential vernal pool because it does hold a sufficient amount of standing water. So we revised the plans to show that as isolated vegetated wetland and a potential vernal pool with the mean high water essentially coincident with the wetland flags for this particular wetland. So considering that and our successful review with Mark and agreeing on the flags together, we respectfully request the issuance of an order of resource area delineation and are happy to take any questions that the commission has.
All right.
And I can stop
Thank you,
sharing
Claire.
my screen.
Yep. Raul, do you have anything to add?
Not at this moment, thanks.
All right. Mr. Turner? All right. Jen?
No questions, Mark. Mark is very thorough. Claire, as I'm sure you found out. So he's really good. So thank you for working with him. Thank you for going back out and addressing his kind of changes and concerns. I do just have one question for Mr. Turner. Why aren't we delineating Round Pond and Coonamessett Pond? Out of curiosity. I'm sure Mark has asked this question, so.
We had no expectation or plans and still have no expectation or plans to be anywhere near them or touch anything anywhere near 100 feet of them.
Okay. So the conceptual plans submitted to the, I mean, and I know they're conceptual submitted to the planning board are holding those 100-foot buffers to both Round Pond and Coonamessett.
Yes, ma'am, at the minimum. It's possible to be moderately larger, location to location, but an absolute minimum of a no touch. My general rule of thumb is if I don't need to ask for it, I don't have a very good argument to ask for it. So in this case, we've got enough golf course to work on. So there's no need to make the request to go into the buffer.
Yeah, 100+ acres of golf course, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I have no other questions or comments.
All right, Mr. Newton?
I have nothing additional to add, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Just out of simplicity, I'm going to open up to anybody. So, Courtney?
No comments.
All right. Kevin?
No comments.
All right. Mark?
Looks good to me.
Keep wanting to include Maury. Pat?
No comments, thank you.
Peter?
No comments.
And Steve?
No comments.
All right.
I'll make a motion to
So-
close it, take it under advisement.
Okay.
Second.
Anybody else? All right. We have a motion and a second. Are we actually looking to close this, Jen, or is it to accept?
Well, I was just gonna say that, no, you'll vote the INRAD at the next meeting. So Claire, what they'll do is they'll close the hearing, take it under advisement, and they'll have them vote the INRAD at their next scheduled meeting, which is next week.
Okay, do you anticipate asking any of us to be present for that, or?
No, because they won't take any comments or public
Okay.
or anything like that because the hearing's closed. It's basically just a formality. I never really have, unless there's a time crunch, like a really specific time crunch, I never really have vote anything the night they hear something and just let them do it. But ANRAD's, I mean, is Mark is in agreement. They trust Mark, I trust Mark. If you and Mark are in agreement, then I'm okay with the delineation and we'll recommend that they accept it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, not a problem.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. Courtney,
Yes, aye. Bird, aye.
sorry to trip you up.
You both.
Boy, that was a tough one. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. Bless Maury. We've closed this hearing. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, Maury.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Courtney, you would have thought that was adjourning or something.
No, I just,
All right.
we haven't closed very many hearings tonight, so I'll get out of practice.
No, we haven't. No.
Yeah, we have.
Next up, hearings under enforcement order. Andrew L. and Lindsay B. Doherty, 11 East Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Newton is going to present his findings to you, but I just wanted to let you know, I did just promote Mr. Doherty and Mr. and Miss Doherty up so they could address the board. So Doherty's, are you with us? Oh, yep, they are. Excellent. So Kevin can kind of present the issue out there, how he found it, and going forward.
Absolutely. So I believe I sent you guys an email earlier in the day, kind of with an outline of what I'm going to present now, along with a couple of photos, which I can share too. So this is starting in early November. The Conservation Department received an anonymous phone call stating that some tree cutting or removal was taking place at 11 East Ave. So staff made a site visit to check out the complaint, and we found that multiple tree stumps and evidence of recent cutting within the resource area to the coastal bank and the BVW. So what I did was I took some photos of the conditions at the time, and we returned to the office and put together a violation letter, which was sent to Mr. and Miss Doherty. And they very promptly got in touch with us, and since then we've been working with them to point them in the right direction of steps to take to bring the situation into compliance. So that's kind of where we are right now. I had sent you guys photos of what I saw that day. If you'd like me to share them, I'd be more than happy to.
Why don't you just for completeness?
All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Kevin.
Yep, so these are the stumps that we saw, clearly visible. And, just on the other side here that you can't see is the BVW.
Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay, Kevin, can you stop sharing, please?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I
Kevin, you
froze
good?
there. Do you want me to keep the screen up?
No, please take it down. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to jump in right now. So Kevin, thank you
Okay.
for that. So since the initial letter, the Dohertys have been working with the staff, so thank you. I believe in Ms. Doherty or Mr. Doherty, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Kevin, that you've already engaged with a surveyor, because I think it's important for this, because the wetland in question is across the street. We really do need to find where those boundaries are so that we can appropriately guide them on how to mitigate. So I know that you've contracted with a surveyor and reached out to a restoration company. Is that correct?
Yes, if you want me to share my screen with my quick notes. I know it's been a long evening for everyone, but it's not much, if that is helpful.
No, it's your time to address the board, so please.
Sure. Uh-oh, hold on. For some reason, it's not allowing me to share my screen because of system preferences.
Is it saying it won't allow you?
Yeah, it's kicked me over to security and privacy, but then it's not allowing me to click on it. Wait, hold on, let me try. Yeah.
Thomas?
I can just, I also had pictures, but I guess I can just quickly read off the bullet points of what I have.
That's fine.
So we had hired Grant Tree Company to come and cut down 12 trees on our property. And Grant Tree never informed us that we were in a buffer zone or that any kind of permitting was required to do any of the work, which unfortunately for us, we had no idea that we were even in a buffer zone. And we just assumed that if you hire a company, just as if you would hire an electrician, they would be informing you of any kind of permitting that was required. But I guess this has occurred often with Grant Tree and the town. So he did not cut down the 12 trees. He actually only cut down 2. So right now we have 2 trees remaining, and they are entangled in power lines that run the length of East Avenue. So we do have concerns about the fact that, you know, these trees, which are aren't in the best shape as it is, are entangled in power lines that could end up taking out electricity for many houses in the neighborhood at some point. The trees that we cut down were scrub pines. They had shallow roots. They were covered in lichen and they swayed often in storms. So we had concern that they would fall and cause loss of life or destruction of property. We didn't have any kind of grand plan for the area. We just wanted to get rid of the trees that were potentially dangerous and give our children more space in the yard to play. And we have contacted, we've been in contact with the surveyor and Clover Landscaping Company to help with mitigation. And I did have pictures to show you of the trees prior to what Mr. Newton had showed you so that you could see the condition that they were in, but unfortunately I'm not able to share my screen.
Is that all, Ms. Doherty?
I think so. Andy, is there anything I missed? Okay.
Well, thank you for that. So I think the important thing for your family is to get that survey done, because then you'll know the area of concern, and then we can work with you instead of going out and contracting right away with a restoration company, which I appreciate the steps you've taken. We've talked about that. It really does go a long way to show this board that you're you know addressing the issue that was raised. So I think once you get that survey, from your surveyor, if you could, do you know what time frame he gave you to get that done?
No, he had spoken to Mr. Newton, I think, maybe last week. And I was under the impression that we were waiting to just be told what to do here before moving forward with anything
Okay.
in particular.
Kevin, did you have a conversation with John?
Yeah, I talked with John and let him know the situation, what I would be presenting, and kind of what I expected the commission to expect themselves. And I discussed that a survey would be one of the first steps.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, like the other enforcements we've been recently doing, I think we should continue this work, have John, I believe they're contracting with John Doyle, have John do the survey. So then we know exactly what kind of areas we're dealing with here. That wetland, I said, is across the street. So we need to know exactly where those A and B buffer zones are so that we can help guide the Dohertys on what they need to do. Kevin, if you could go out there and see, Ms. Doherty, are you saying there are cut trees tangled in the power lines, or they're?
No, so when I say that this whole project has been an epic disaster from start to finish, I don't exaggerate. He took the job telling us that he would cut down the 2 trees that were entangled in the power lines because of our concerns. And my husband and I had both already contacted the town and the power company about doing it because we had concerns, and the town and the power company just kind of put us back on one another, and they weren't going to touch the trees. So that's what prompted us to call Grand Tree. He said he would cut them down. And then when we showed up at our house, they were still there. So they're still there and they're still entangled in the power lines. Which is one of the pictures I actually had to show you of the 2 lone trees with, what limbs they have in these lines.
Okay. We'll work with you on that, Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. I just wouldn't
No,
want.
I can't have the trees in the power lines. So if they're not within the road layout, the town isn't going to go on private property and remove the trees. It's just a policy of the town, unless it's in the road layout and it's a responsibility of the town. The town cannot go onto private property to remove a tree for you. Or
because of some kind of
be up to the power company. So I don't know why the power company is putting it back on the town, but
they're saying some kind of union rules or regulations. I don't know.
Yeah, so I've dealt with the power company before. So what we're going to have you do is we're going to continue this for a month. We're going to have you get your survey from John. We'll tell John what he needs to do. We'll go out there and look at the trees and the power lines and see what we can do to help you get those down. Once John has that survey, we'll be able then to move forward with saying, okay, at this point you have your survey. We know where that no disturbance zone is. We know what we need you to do. And then we can give you some clear guidance from them. Until we have that survey, that's our most important piece. We really can't, I don't want to sit there and say, go out and contract with a restoration firm. You go out and sign a contract and, they want to do all this work, which might not even be necessary once we get that survey. So that's why I'm saying it's really important to have that survey. What I'd like to do to keep this moving forward and to keep everybody on a track is to continue this for a month, work with you to get the survey, and then we can determine how to move forward. And then that can give clear guidance to this commission on what they should, recommend, what they should require you to do. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
And in the meantime, Kevin and I will, most likely Kevin, will go out and assess the trees and the power lines, and we'll work with you to get either have them pruned or removed if they're a danger. Okay?
Okay, great.
Does that sound okay to you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, I'm
Yes, sir.
waiting for it, Courtney. I saw your face.
You know, this is not the first time encountered Mr. Grant ignoring regulations.
Let's not go there tonight.
So I think some sort of conversation with the owner of Grant Tree is in order, because this is not good. He should have been involved enough to.
Courtney, just to follow up, and Jamie, I can address that. I was in contact. We were looking for a mailing address for Grant Tree. I did have a conversation with them the other day. I have that address. We will be sending a letter, and he is well aware that this board would like to have a discussion. Okay?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes, how is this going to prevent, a letter or talking, to Mr. Grant? If an electrician comes to my house and does work and he doesn't pull a permit, he gets fined. We're the ones that have to go through all of this and essentially getting fined because we didn't follow the proper permits. We didn't know this. The contractor should have told us. There's no fines for the contractor. There's no penalties for the contractor. And just getting a letter, the contractor is going to keep doing it. It's like a child that just, you let run free and you let them do whatever they want. And you just talk to them. And you don't take anything away from them. There needs to be some sort of penalty for the contractor also.
I couldn't agree with you more, and this has been a sore point with me. People doing work without a permit. And particularly people like this that know better. They're in the field, they're there all the time. And, I've spoken about this issue before, and, unfortunately, we haven't come up with a system of holding people like this feet to the fire. They don't, tree guys, I don't believe are licensed by the town to perform work within the town, which is an issue. Whereas an electrician or a plumber, yeah, they have a license, but tree guys don't.
But the tree guys do have an arborist license, and just like the electricians and plumbers, they have licenses throughout the state. The
They don't have to
electricians,
be an arborist to go into business.
Yeah, but that doesn't
That
doesn't cover conservation issues.
That's the that's the dilemma.
I understand. It's just there needs to be some sort of penalty other than a letter.
Yeah.
I mean, monetary hurts everybody.
Oh, I know. And I'm sympathetic to this, and the founder of the company no longer is with us, and so one of his longtime employees has taken it over. But I can remember Grant being in a hearing where, I blasted the guy for doing work. So, but unfortunately, if we don't have a licensing thing, that's an issue. So
It's just going to continue to happen to unsuspecting homeowners like myself.
Yeah, you and I are in agreement on this, and it's unfortunate that, you're in a situation now, but, it's more the aggravation of everything than anything else. And, we understand, and we'll work with you.
Thank you.
Jen,
Yes?
anything else?
No.
All right, so we're gonna continue for 30 days to allow them to get the resources.
Yeah, I think that's, in
identified.
this case,
Go ahead.
I just think in this case, it's appropriate. I really, because of the roadway, I really, I want to know where that buffer zone is.
Okay.
Because I don't want to, I don't want the board to require
Yeah.
something that might not be required. So I think it's important to have that survey. And I can't even find a survey close to this property. I thought I had one on this property and I don't. I just think it's important to have that survey, and then the staff can offer more guidance to the homeowner and then offer more guidance to the commission on what they should require, what you should require.
Okay.
Okay,
So I would entertain a motion and a second to continue this for,
you gotta give a date.
um,
I would say, John. We're not gonna meet on the 24th. How about we do the 24th of February?
So I will move to continue this until the 24th of February.
thank you. Anybody want to second it?
Second.
Don't be shy. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until February 24th. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right, it is unanimous. This hearing is continued until February 24th. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, thank
What is
Have a good night.
going on with my computer tonight?
Next up, vote order of conditions. First item,
Thomas, I
John D.
can't seem
Mitchell.
to, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thomas, can you remove Mr. Thank you?
Yep, he's done.
Sorry about that.
As I was saying, John D. Mitchell, 340 Scranton Avenue, Falmouth, Mass.
That is the dock reconstruction that was presented by Falmouth Engineering. I think they're just replacing an existing structure, provided the chapter 91. Kevin, was there anything odd about this one? I don't believe there was.
Give me 1 second.
Great, and I forgot to grab all those files when I fled the office the other day, so I don't have the packet in front of me.
No, I don't think there was,
No, there wasn't.
yeah, I don't think there was anything.
No notes.
So I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Pat and second.
Just to ask, was there a time of year restriction, Jen?
No, there wasn't. I think I looked at that. I don't believe there was a time of year restriction for this one.
Yeah, there was no need to de-water or anything else.
No, it's a pier replacement.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
All right. Anybody have anything they want to add to it? All right. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
Thank you. We've issued an order of conditions. Next up, Scott Dravis, VRI Americas, 45 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass.
This is that little condo area across from the Surf Drive parking lot. They want to do kind of the improvements over to the pool area. I think they want to put a kiddie pool in, some stuff around, and then they're putting some plantings because they're in 50 feet of the dune. So it was pretty straightforward. We did have some questions regarding the stormwater management plan, some of the monitoring or maintenance of the vegetation. And I believe that Matt Crichton from the BSC group clarified all the questions and concerns we had with the application. A lot of it was just boilerplate language, like cutting the rain garden to a height of 2 inches. We know we're not going to be cutting the bayberry to a height of 2 inches. So they clarified that prior to the hearing for this board. So we're all set. Kevin, anything? Newton?
I don't have anything to add to that, no.
So I'll move that we accept the order as discussed.
Walsh, second.
Come on. Don't be shy.
Mr. Chairman,
I didn't have, yes, sir.
have the staff been out to view this site? There is work occurring in proximity of this location. I
I'll go
cannot
out and-
determine. What?
Okay. Steve, when I went out there was no work.
When was that?
I went out there a while ago with BSC to review it. So I'll have Kevin or Alyssa, I'll have Kevin when he comes into town, look at that. Kevin, when are you coming into town again?
Check it out tomorrow, Steve. Where am I looking?
Just drive by. You can't miss it.
It's that Kevin, you know where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You saw work going on right at the
I
condo
did.
project? Okay. So
Again,
Kevin, if you would
there-
check on that and then report back to us?
Thank you, Kevin.
I have no problem
Maybe-
with the work, Mr. Chairman. It's just the schedule.
Yeah.
Yep, no, I get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. For clarification, what do we have for the quorum on this one?
340 Scranton, Courtney, Kevin, Maury. Well, Maury's not here today, but Betsy's not here today. Jamie, Steve, Peter, myself, and Mark.
All of you.
Okay, so we're covered.
Mhm.
Okay. Anybody have anything else you want to add to this? All right. Do we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions? Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
Excellent. We've issued an order of conditions.
Just so this board knows, I'm quarantined again by the town. So, I'm not gonna be able to go back into the office until I'm cleared to go back, which might not be until, I'm hoping it's Monday or Tuesday of next week, I'm hoping. But I won't know. It depends when I, get a test result. So, Steve, so that's why Kevin's gonna have to do it. So just to let you know, I'm working from home, but I can't go out in the field and I can't go into the office right now.
No reason Kevin can't do that anyway.
No.
Right?
He's coming into
So-
town. So thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted you guys to know that. Next up, Mr. Chairman, Gunning Point.
Oh, can I? Thanks.
Yeah.
Pinson Alt Builders, 47 Gunning Point Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. This is a raise and rebuild.
Raise and rebuild, okay, Pat, I'll get right to that. It's gonna be the same people on Scranton. Okay. Raise and rebuild, Mr. Borselli, took the concerns of the commission, reduced the enclosed space, provided the revised plans. The only thing, provided some clarification about the walls being removed on the side. So I think basically addressed all of the staff's questions, concerns, and commission's requirements.
So I'll move the
We
way
just want to,
the order is discussed.
Yeah, and then they're
We wanna-
flipping the mitigation.
we want a pre-construction meeting,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, we can
standard
do a
anyway, right?
pre-construction meeting.
All right, Pat, quorum, please.
Courtney, Kevin, Betsy and Maury, not here now. Jamie, Steve, Peter, myself, and Mark.
So once again, I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Pat and second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Anybody have anything they want to add? All right, Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
we've issued an order of conditions. Thank you. Last up, Cyrus Wetner, 18 Seabreeze Lane, Falmouth, Mass. This is a septic and
Septic upgrade, driveway upgrades, and regular landscape improvements, doing some restoration around the property. They will be cutting a lot of that vegetation back around the house. I know that Maria Hickey's kind of conceptual plan had her planting right up to the house where the vegetation is now. The staff would really prefer the house, that a 10-foot wide area around the house be maintained for maintenance, access, let that house breathe, like we normally require. But it started as a septic upgrade and then kind of morphed into the landscape improvements. But
She
they do
accepted
need
that
to put
restriction, correct?
they do need to put a hay bale line or some sort of erosion control line along that land area, and no landscape fabric in that land, like that black landscape fabric in that restoration project.
he was reminded of that, correct? If I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And she agreed with the 10-foot,
Yeah.
if you will,
I think
limit
it's
of work.
appropriate. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Anybody have anything different they want to add to it? All right, Pat, can you give me the quorum, please?
Courtney, Kevin, Jamie, Steve, Peter, Mark, and myself.
So I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Patton, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else, Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Thank you. We have issued an order of conditions. That's all we have, folks.
Just one more thing, Peter, I know that you asked for a schedule. I didn't do it yet, but I've talked to Jamie. I'll do it tomorrow morning, and I will get Amy to issue you guys a schedule up until Memorial Day. I thought of you, Peter. I'm like, oh, Peter's gonna ask me for that schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get it to you guys. Sorry about that.
We'll see if Courtney makes a motion to accept.
I'll make an motion to adjourn.
All right.
Patton, second.
You know, wow, Courtney's made every single motion tonight. All right. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Courtney.
What is it I'm supposed to say? Oh, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Courtney, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.